On his 16th birthday, the hero began the life of the adventure. It has been 4 years since then. The gates are slowly open. The High Warrior returns to his craft. The struck hero, who is only temporarily performing the duties of the magician, he unexpectedly states that they are expelled. The warrior thinks whether the craft is really a magician. 3 adventure seekers suddenly approach the hero and start attacking him, claiming that he is absolutely unable to play his role. They are even ready to believe that his magic seal is false, because Kraft is able to use only the simplest magic. In response, he only squeezes his stick. One of the adventurers came to the conclusion about the profession of Kraft. He says he has no ability to be an adventure seeker, and the hero can only agree with it. So, Kraft was kicked out of the company again, and he thought how many more times he would have to experience it. When the hero appears to the secretary of the guild, he immediately guesses what happened. The hero of Crying Eyes confirms his guess. Then the secretary politely expresses his opinion. She sincerely believes that Kraft is not suitable for the adventure. It is not expelled from the team for the first time. Kraft seeks to become a strong magician, but for a long time and no team is delayed. He does not find words for the secretary. His witchcraft is too weak, and even from the lightest monsters, he constantly has to save. Kraft has only mastered the simplest basics of magic. For example, he learned to create water. Further, he could not move yet. He is confused and does not know how to proceed. The memories of many refusals that he once have experienced. Suddenly, the secretary reports that they have received an appeal from the Guild of Builders. This request is different from the usual. The hero was immediately interested. In fact, the construction of a new village on a secret road near the border will begin soon. They need someone who can stay there for a long time. The hero understands that he will have to leave the Guild of Adventurers. He also understands that his exit from the guild will change nothing. He does not want to agree to this proposal. The secretary is convinced that this place is suitable for him, because there is no special combat skills here. Since Kraft is an unsuccessful magician and has no ability to adventure, he has nothing left to agree. He informs the secretary of his consent to fulfill the request, and asks to explain in detail all the circumstances of the case. The secretary glanced at such a compassion and immediately began to draw up all the necessary documents. So Skill was officially expelled from the Adventurers Guild. Kraft feels an inspiration. He believes that this moment will be a turning point in his life. He dreams of becoming a real construction master. He seeks to test himself in this new business. But suddenly something distracts him. He hears a foreign noise. The loader rushes hastily, carrying a heavy package on his shoulders. Kraft notices that life is boiling around him. He froze in the middle of the square where crowds of people were around. Suddenly he hears someone calls him. The man approaches, puzzled, wondering what the artisan does here. But he only dares to ask where the registrar is. The man is still unable to hide his annoyance and asks who the hero intends to register the craft. But as soon as he learns that the guy came from the Adventurers Guild, his attitude suddenly changes to the friendly. The stranger hugs Kraft and thanks to him sincerely for he came. After that, he tells his colleagues that he will go away for a short time, and together with Kraft goes out to hold him. When the hero reached the Builders Guild, the stranger was already waiting for him and said that he was waiting for him here. It turns out that this man is the leader of the guild. When the hero calls his full name, Kraftwaken, the guild leader is even more fond of. He exclaims that it is just a wonderful name for a construction master. It is extremely pleasing, and even the skill is inferior to the game. While the leader of the guild fills the papers on Kraft, he notices that he is a magician. However, Kraft hastily assures that he is not really capable of anything, and even 4 years of exercises did not make at least some magician. The leader does not trust these words. He is interested in the hero, whether he tested the power of his coat of arms. As it turned out, the hero has not yet tested his capabilities. Kraft was born in a village where the magic power was felt stronger than in other places, which is why he received his coat of arms. This is all he can tell about himself. Hearing this, the leader proposes to turn to a priest who can check the abilities of his coat of arms. The hero does not agree because it will be too expensive, but the leader assures everything is under control. Kraft says why they are so good to him, and the leader replies, if he finds out that he has an artisan's talent, it will be a real luck for them. Kraft is aware of it, but I am sure that his ancestral coat of arms is not suitable for magic. He replies that he would still think about this proposal, and in the meantime, the leader called a man in a high hat who was sitting near the counter. He is a priest, a faithful servant of Geraldist. He politely turns to Kraft with a proposal to test the power of his coat of arms. Kraft agrees, and the priest begins the rite. The abilities of the coat of arms are currently carefully checked and analyzed. Suddenly, the faces of the maid dies with surprise. He says he can't believe what is possible. Kraft does not understand what is happening. The priest said that he had never seen anything incompatible as the skill in the coat of arms used by the army. Incompatibility is so great that the use of the coat of arms can even damage the guy's health. Kraft is amazed at this news and cannot believe heard. People around him are no less than himself. Kraft is about to be faint with surprise. The minister insisted on changing the coat of arms immediately. After all, he said, the coat of arms which does not meet the standards should not work at all, except for quite isolated cases. Kraft still cannot believe what he saw. In the eyes of the surprised audience, the priest proposes to rewrite the coat of arms right now, and Kraft agrees. The hero is wondering which coat of arms suits him. The servant reported that the coat of arms, endowed with the strongest special force, is best suited for Kraft. This is a Twilight Alchemist. Kraft and no idea what it is. Everyone around is surprised. Guild leader grabs the product with delight. He has never heard of Twilight Alchemist. As it turned out, this coat of arms gives the alchemist some special differences from conventional alchemists. The alchemist is a truly valuable sign, but the Dusk Alchemist has never been seen. There are also advanced versions of the coats of arms that develop the initial sign. The Twilight Alchemist has the same abilities as the usual alchemist, but now the protagonist is the strongest among all alchemists. The name seems strange because it is temporary. Earlier, no one had such a coat of arms. The minister invented this to show that if the main character is mastering alchemy, he will be able to create gold. Responding to a direct question whether he agrees to change the coat of arms, Kraft hesitates as if he's saying goodbye to the old one. He finally appeals to the priest to change the coat of arms to release the old coat of arms from suffering. The minister reassures him, saying that there is nothing to worry about, and the ritual of appeal begins. Finally, the minister solemnly announces the name of a new coat of arms, the Twilight Alchemist. The ritual ends, and a new drawing appears on the hero's hand. Suddenly, the hand shone with a bright light, and the hero felt a powerful magical energy from his head to heels wraps him, filling every cell of the body. He cannot believe that this is his magic. The coat of arms on the hand is golden. The priest explains that among all multicolored coats of arms, gold is the highest status. He has never heard of this before, and now he will definitely tell others about this strange pattern. The hero sincerely thanked the servant, but he only modestly replied that he simply did his job. A stranger exclaims loudly. For the first time in life, she meets an alchemist, and such a high level. The head of the guild officially represents it. Her name is Leifa Hemen. Leifa is a group that goes to the border. On the way they meet Kraft. While the bodice told how good it would be to have an alchemist in a team, Kraft asked how a little girl could go to the border. The head of the guild only smiled condescendingly. He reports that the bodice not only joined the group, but it leads to everyone. Kraft is stunned by such news. The leader adds that sending such a talented alchemist to the border is a completely illogical decision. The bodice denies him loudly. She hugs the hero firmly, clinging to him, without going to let go. Kraft is confused because of what is happening. And the bodice continues to argue with the leader. They cannot decide where to send Kraft. Noticing Kraft's confusion, the leader explained. The bodice actually partly a legging, so looks younger than it really is, and her true age is much larger. This causes Life a real outbreak of anger, and she, without hesitation, grabs a giant hammer, threatening the leader. The leader with obedience asks LeFou forgive him, and Kraft notes himself that he is not so strong. Krep turns to Leaf to let him go. He is still uncomfortable in this situation. The leader's answer is another joke about Leaf age. It hits the floor with incredible force on the floor. The whole building begins to tremble, and the beams are collapsed one by one. Leifa says that the money will be taken from the Builders Guild, and everyone agrees. Kraft believes that the leader himself is guilty of everything. The chairman of the Construction Guild proudly tells of the strength of the Leifa. However, another person, the head of the village. In the case, a straight family line of border graph is mixed. Kraft is surprised, as possible, that a noble gentleman is managing only one border village. The section shows how he negotiates, revealing his skills in communicating and finding a common language with others. But he believes that they will cope with a semi-Carl and alchemist of Twilight in their team. Kraft, however, cannot get rid of anxious anticipation. But it will be his first work of the alchemist, so he will make every effort to make everything. The next morning is finally leaning. Everyone is eagerly waiting for the departure, and Leifa reassures everyone, promising that they will leave as soon as the carts are fully loaded. Trolleys and luggage so much that it seems as if the whole guild goes with them. But it only seems like that. because they take with them everything they will need settlers in a new place. The hero watches carefully how the carts are filled with things. The whole luggage of the hero is stored in a special space. Kraft has mastered this skill in one night, just became an alchemist. When he told the director and Raphael, they were both genuinely surprised. Kraft did not expect such a reaction. The leader does not even suspect the existence of such ability, and the bodice says it is extremely rare talent. They ask Kraft to use it right now. The leader finds what a new thing can be tested for. A whole mountain of bricks, which must be unloaded, appears before Kraft. He tries to turn out in words, but the chief does not retreat and persistently persuades him to take up the case. Leifa supports the leader. He says that these bricks are very heavy and dense, so you can immediately understand how much space for crafts can withstand. He agrees that this is really the best way to test the skill. Feeling that his forces are unlikely to cope with this task, the hero reads the spell and directs him simply on a cart. To all, everything goes perfectly. The trolley disappears in the repository. The attendees cannot believe their eyes. It was not difficult, although the hero was surprised at the ability to work even with such great weight. He tried to return the cart to the place, and he succeeded. Kraft is delighted. He never had to use such powerful magic before. The hero thinks, even if nothing works with alchemy, now he has a spare option. You can try yourself with a loader. At the same time, the team leader gives the command to collect all the cards together, because it intends to use the craft. This ability acts immediately on all cards, so all present rejoice in this incredible sight. Kraft and Lef found themselves in the center of the enthusiastic crowd that looked at them with a sincere admiration. The joy of the audience confuses the hero. The head of the guild, despite the denying of the master, offers the hero a monetary reward for transportation of goods. After all, if someone learns that the alchemist of this level is free of charge, Kraft will have a lot of trouble. Once among grateful people, the hero thinks that he was able to make so much money that he would be enough for a few months of carefree life. And this is only because of one of his skills. He proudly considers his new coat of arms. Leifa turns to Kraft and asks him to talk to her without unnecessary formalities. Now all members of the guild have become a real friends to him, and he can turn to her nickname. Everyone is incredibly glad that such powerful comrades joined the team. The bodice wished the hero of good luck, what he thanked her, politely addressing, "Thank you, sir." So, the hero became an alchemist of Twilight and steps towards a new life. So Kraftokin is a magician, to whom he was constantly expelled from the team. Despite all this, he discovered a new vocation. Having received the most powerful magical sign, the seal of the Twilight Alchemist, he goes to the settlement of Kaitak to start the life of a true alchemist. Kraft and Bodice go to the ceremony of the first group of pioneers. The hero does not understand what the essence of this event is, but the girl reassures him. This is just a long tradition. He hopes that the ceremony will not last too long, and appeals to the Leifa with a request to finish everything faster. But to their surprise, the entire square was filled with soldiers in the armor, who were trailing. The head of the guild is outraged that he asked to simplify the ceremony, but the leader of the soldiers replies, "Someone has overcome a long way, and therefore they need to be found with honor." The leader is suitable for a tall man in noble clothes. It is recommended as Zaid Gassadol Weil. Everyone falls on one knee. It is this decision that becomes a humble response to a situation that makes you lean. There is no need to kneel, because this is not an official visit. We just met for talk. Zay begins to say that his younger brother takes care of the village of Kaitak. He also goes forward. His name is Kyle Gassadal Wide, and he is a very little boy, which is why surprised whispers appear around immediately. The leader is disappointed that a small child will become his future leader. Kraft and Lyaf also meet it with some interest and even fun. The hero feels anxious. He does not leave a bad anticipation. It turns out that there is a little girl next to Kale, his younger sister, Mina Weil. Kyle explains that they have their reasons for such accompaniment. Through them, the boy took his sister with him. The leader tries to argue, urging Zaya to think about the safety of children because the village is dangerous. But Zay is already well understood. Zeid asks the guy if he is ready for the hike, and he assures that so. So, according to Zaid, there is nothing to worry about. In addition, the aristocrat warns, if something happens suddenly, the expedition manager will have to be responsible for it, and then everyone is waiting for a severe punishment. Kraft realizes that in the words of Zeid he wants to give his younger brother a chance to show himself, but in fact he gives him an impossible task that will only spoil Kale's reputation. The guy squeezes his fists with determination until the aristocrat stops his tirade. At this moment, Kraft interrupts Zaid. Before the frightened Lefa and the head, He loudly states that he is confident in the future success of their business. The girl is noticeably worried, but Zed shows true curiosity. Kraft shares his thoughts. The guy reminds him of himself as a child, so he is ready to help Kale. At least, unlike Kraft himself in his youth, Kyle is not alone. Kraft is convinced that the guy is not in vain. He believes that they will soon overcome all the difficulties and return the winners. Zate froze, and the guilds grabbed their heads, not believing. Suddenly the aristocrat laughed at the whole voice. He recognizes Kraft's courage, as well as his sharpness. However, he is convinced that the colonists are waiting for difficult times. He turns and goes away, wishing the boys good luck and reminding that the most important thing is the result. The hero believes that this is the worst farewell ceremony in his life. The manager and the bodice immediately attaches him with questions. How did he want to organize such? Kraft could no longer contain his emotions. Then Kyle interferes with the conversation. Turning a tense confrontation, he is wondering, which made Kraft mix. The leader, along with Lifa, immediately falls around and pull the hero behind. They ask the aristocrats not to be offended, but the guy assures that there is no need to bow. Kraft tells the boy that he once found himself in the same position. He shares with him the history of his life, the life of a vain adventurer. Hearing all the difficulties that Kraft had to endure, the hero feels affinity with him and wants to help Kale. Kyle acknowledges that he is indeed a weak, but this time he will do his best. He sincerely hopes that he will be able to help somehow. Finally, he recognizes loudly what needs help with needlework. His sister confirms his brother's words, supporting him. Kraft assured the guy that they would be able to cope. His words were caused by the general exaltation and joy. Guilders warmly remember Kale's kindness and exclaim that they are happy to be with him in one team. So the guy's glory has grown significantly. The team left the Guild of the Builders and decided to bypass, because to go just forward was too risky. They reached the forest only on the second day. The great-grandfather and Leofoy go so quickly that the rest barely have time for them and are already tired. Some ask how much else to go, and others are tiredly asked to stop. Liefa offers to relax at least a day. The journey is endless. The night descends the city. Lief complains that it is difficult for her to follow the established regulations. Kraft proposes to cook endurance potions so that everyone can remain cheerful longer. Endurance potions are medicines that will add strength to the entire team. It is easy to make, so the master can prepare it for everyone. The bodice notes that each potion requires a whole bucket of herbs, and they have little stocks. But Kraft understands that thanks to his mighty coat of arms, he will only have a spoonful of the necessary herbs to create a potion. He wants to test his theory. The guy picks up water into a glass and adds a spoonful of herbs that were stored in the workshop. The bowl is born the first endurance potion. It was this craft potion that created immediately after he became an alchemist. In the darkness of the potion quietly glows. He extends the girl with a bowl, and she focuses, trying to determine his quality with magic. Kraft expected a sentence. Suddenly the bodice exclaims from surprise. She cannot believe that Kraft managed to create such a special potion. It turned out that the potion he created was a real legend. Both are insanely surprised. The coat of arms is delighted to tell the hero that the potion created is simply incredible. It has been operating for half a day, and it can be stored for 1,000 years. The bodice is endless. They decide the next day to give potions to all settlers. The morning comes. The dwellings taste the soup and wonder. Why did its taste suddenly change? Everyone admire the soup and are interested in Kraft, which the new seasoning he added this time. The potion made the dish much delicious. Last night, everyone was lying almost without strength, exhausted to the edge. But now there was no trace of fatigue. Even the horse shed a little potion and came to life, to wonder how everything changed overnight. Kraft extends the elixir Kyle and his sister, who have not yet had time to taste it. But before they have time to try, the hero suddenly interrupts. Children's guards, Alfred and Persia, are very concerned with the health of their wards. They suspect that the potion is too effective, and it is suspected. However, other settlers give themselves good advice, and the guy fully trusts skills. Even the knights impress his determination. Alfred dares to test the potion on himself. He drinks a bottle to the end and feels a sharp chest pain, grabbing his hands over the heart. Energy literally overwhelms it. Persia even begins to worry whether everything is fine with him. However, Kraft assures that the potion has no side effects. The action of the potion is extremely powerful, but the consequences can be no less serious. Suddenly, the camp is anxiety. A flock of goblins attacks. Persia tries to evaluate how strong the defenders are, but the results of its intelligence are not pleased. Only one figure ran to meet the goblins, loudly stating that he would deal with them. The goblins move forward. Alfred Streamhead breaks into a crowd of goblins and scatters them with powerful blows. Despite what powerful technique he does not use, the knight does not get tired at all. Kraft feels sincere thanks for his help. The settlers move so fast that they were ahead of their own schedule. They thought to get to their destination in a month, but they actually did it much earlier. The team reaches its goal in just a week, but the appearance of their eyes does not inspire at all. They are distrustful of overgrown ruins of houses. It turns out that in this village Luffy grew. Kraft watches her, touches the debris, and memories of her own childhood come to life in her memory. At this point, someone sounds Lifa. The boys find a wonderful place and decide that it is here that the village is worth building. Kraft believed that in the wasteland he would have to start from scratch, so he really rejoices in such a news. But the Lifa still hesitates. According to her, this settlement had previously belonged to the gnomes. Kyle approaches us. As a manager, he has to talk to each before the change. Lifa replies that the seller loves Kyle very much, and it would be great if he made a speech. She quickly rushes to call people, and Kraft, meanwhile, thinks about how it is to be in the hometown of Lifa. Kraft would like to support the girl with a kind word. At this point, Kyle politely turns to the hero, and at first he does not even realize that the aristocrat is in front of him. Realizing this, Kraft immediately apologizes for his sharpness. The guy confidently states that he wants to become closer to the Kraft. He asks to turn to him without any formalities, but Kraft refuses because their status is too different. But the guy insists on his own. He uses his charm and ingenuity and seems to be ready to succumb. They exchanged views and eventually the hero agreed. Kyle is unusual today, although his security does not share this mood at all. Kyle begins his speech in front of the settlers. He tells them the importance of defining borders and explains why the boundaries of the new territory should be clearly marked. The land they are now on should be mastered as soon as possible. He urges his people to make every effort to achieve this goal. The crowd explodes with applause. Kyle guards do not even hold back tears from pride. The guy confidently accepts all those present. The hero notices his sister Kyle, who's shyly ill for his brother. He returns to her. He says the girl can stand near him if she wishes it. Then the girl rushes to the artisan and gently presses against him, looking for support. Meanwhile, Kyle asks the settlers to take care of the alchemist. Kraft looked at the boy in surprise, and he explained his request. They say, the hero has helped everyone more than once, and he would still be useful to many. The settlers went to perform their crafts. He tries to convince everyone that everyone should work hard. But at this point, people are approaching. Builders are delighted. They grasp the guy and begin to throw him in the air, rejoicing with him. The bodice is watching this scene from afar and quietly notes that Kraft is now responsible for these people. Despite all the protests, it lasted almost an hour. When the guy is finally released, the bodice has already plunged into organizational affairs. The bodice decided to reward the guards who accompanied them on the road. However, they did not demand anything superfluous. As a reward was enough only bottles of potion to restore strength. Kraft extends them a bottle, but Lefa interrupts it, explaining that special packaging is needed to maintain the quality of the potion. She offers Kraft to make such a bottle alone, but Kraft immediately recalls that the shelf life of this tincture is 1,000 years. This is so striking in all those present that they cannot hide their surprise. In this special bottle of potion, it lies for 1,000,000 years without losing its properties. Adventurers go on the road, having received the healing elixir, and the masters are already taken up for the construction of new homes. Lithia stands in front of the house in which she is offered to settle. She is surprised. Why was it settled with Kraft? The girl notes that this house is much larger than others. Kraft asks with interest whether she really does not want to live with him. The girl mutilates something in response, lowering her eyes from embarrassment. Kraft does not joke, and this only confuses it. He acknowledges that living together is really a little strange, but reminds, they are both members of the guild and therefore comrades. The girl is upset because of his naivety. Life notes that living together in one room is a rather ambiguous situation, but the builder assures that there are separate rooms in this house, and everyone will live in their own, so she has nothing to worry about. The girl feels a strong shame. Kyle is coming with both, but Luffy is busy. Angry, she throws Kraft's head on the ground, indignant with his pranks, which disgraced her. The guy is frightened, but despite the fear, he turns to the Eye of Life with an urgent problem. There is no well in the village, and every time you have to walk on the water up to the river. It is very inconvenient. Kraft agrees that having at least one well right in the village would be much more convenient for everyone. Lifa doubts that they will be so easy to find a water vein. However, Kraft assures that he can create water on his own. Life does not believe him because she is confident. Only magicians can create water, and Kraft, an alchemist. However, Kraft recalls a previously learned spell to create water. He felt a new emblem as the magical forces were awakened inside, and was now ready to apply all his knowledge. Lifa and Kyle are delighted, and the inventive device has an even better idea. He proposes to try to find the place with the help of Wickerness. The boys are confused. They do not understand what it is. Wei guesses that this is a way to find water or underground veins. And indeed, so it is. Kraft intends to create a charming pendulum made of ordinary stone with the help of alchemy. This pendulum is swinging just when he finds out over the underground veins, so they can look for water even without special devices. But there was one problem in the way. To create magical stones, there is a lack of resources, and there are no materials for their manufacture at all. Such stones fall out of monsters, and the rarely and more creatures, the more valuable the stone. They are very often used in alchemy. Kraft needs a magic stone orca, but it is not easy to get it. If you send Persia and Alfred in search, no one will oversee the children. Stones can be bought in the city, but since it takes a lot and constantly, it will not be easy to buy the required amount. Kraft reported that he was ready to go in search of stones, and suddenly one of the settlers approaches him. He reports that intelligence found a village near Orche. This is a real luck for artisans. At least 20 orcs live in the village. The usual settlers who live here are very scared. They are ordinary people and know how dangerous the orcs are. But Lydia does not feel a drop of fear, even when it is a whole 20 of these terrible creatures. She says that although she has left an adventure life, she is still able to cope with a couple of orcs. But Kraft insists. This time he will leave himself. He is also a former adventurer and does not allow the girl to risk life because he knows well what it can turn. But the girl denies, because she was also once an adventurer. Kraft asks to entrust intelligence with him. No one had no idea that he would go into reconnaissance, but Kraft himself confessed that he was largely chosen because he was a terrible magician. Because of this, he had to take up all other things: cooking, repairing things, collecting healing herbs. In addition, he often went to intelligence missions, so this work could be entrusted to him. Kyle and Liffy agreed that this guy had already suffered a lot. He says goodbye to his comrades, assuring them that he is already prepared to stand up for himself. So Kraft goes to explore the surrounding area. He notices how difficult it is to make through the thick forest. If it were not for endurance potions, it would be much more difficult for him to overcome these thickets. He behaves carefully, because there can be traps in the forest. In addition, he cares in advance not to get lost among the trees. He soon feels dangerous. Trusting his intuition, he encounters the orc camp. The orcs fry the game on the fires and eagerly eat it. Kraft notes that it is not 20 orcs here, but about 30. In fact, Kraft went on intelligence to test the powerful magic that has become accessible to him now when he became an alchemist. He was still hesitant, so he did not dare to tell her companions. At least he will try, and even if it turns out to be useless, there is nothing wrong with that. Hiding in the bushes, he thinks what to do next. He trusts the power of his coat of arms, but if something goes wrong, he will always be able to escape. He is the best. Finally, Kraft is supplied and for the first time applies a new skill, an ice prison. The loud sound sounds, and the icy captivity instantly envelops the entire orc camp. The hero does not believe his eyes. The orcs stand as if they were frozen in the icy brimmer, which suddenly grew straight out of the air. Kraft cannot restrain joy, suddenly explodes with exclamations. Finally, he mastered a powerful offensive. Earlier, he was able to be a spell that only helped to move objects, but now his true potential has fully revealed. He is glad that he is able to create such dangerous magic. Meanwhile, a snowstorm is still wandering around. At this point, Kraft realizes with horror that he is incredibly cold. He put a lot of strength in the spell, and now he was just in the midst of the snowstorm. It would be a real shame to freeze to death through their own magic. Therefore, he quickly gathered all the stones and hurried to return to the village. Kraft returns to the village, bringing his prey with him. Everyone looks at him in surprise. Someone asks, "Why did you die?" He amazes the builders, saying that he almost froze to death. Their surprise becomes even greater when it adds, in fact, the orcs were 33, not 20. The hero claims that he used powerful attacking magic, but Lita denies, because Kraft was expelled from the guild for being a worthless magician. This is true, but after changing the craft sign, some miraculously began to use magic. With such a large number of magical stones of orcs, Craft could again become an adventure seeker. However, he looked at Kyle and decided to give up this thought. The hero seeks to prove Kayla's brother, which they are actually capable of. Now, using stones, the artisan is designed by a charming pendulum, and together they go in search of a place for the well. They must move, imagining underground water. And then the artifact begins to glow when they approach the target. Everyone does. Suddenly, the device stops. Where the artifact stopped, his glow became the brightest. They began to dig their best until Lifa watched so that Craft would not join work and could rest a little. Everyone worked without laying their hands. Suddenly froze sharply of sudden surprise. Everyone is happy because they managed to find water. Builders could not believe their happiness. They managed to come across a living on the first attempt, although it is usually much more difficult. The bodice admires how Craft became a hero, won the monster and found a source of water. Hearing this, the builders decide, once, they will bring the best well for him. In the morning, the hero is greeting the joyous news. A new well appeared in the village. When Craft sits for breakfast, he notices how children from aristocratic families approach him. Mina, Sister Kyle, welcomes him on a good morning. Kyle notices that this is an unusual case, because it means that the girl is already quite fond of Craft. But she does not dare to approach the master because she feels shy and does not want to violate the rules of courtesy. When the boys wondered what Craft plans for today, he replied that it would be free and would be a survey of evil. Mina was sensitive to this confession. The size of the product. The girl quietly touches his cloak, but he cannot understand what this aristocrat wants. She is silent and does not give signs at all. All this is carefully observed by her guard Belseo. She says the girl wants to become closer to the main character. Craft notes that Belsia is very different from the Lycon. The guard with enthusiasm watches how Craft removes several magical stones from his spatial storage. Amazed at this opportunity, the young guy grinds stones and cooks a healing potion in a large barrel. A little time has passed, and the healing infusion is ready. Since the potion will not spoil, it was decided to be taken to the warehouse. It was interested in the girls, and they closely watched the whole process. Manus looks carefully at the young man. Belchia notes that they should no longer distract the hero and better return to their affairs. However, the young man easily replies that spending time in the society of such magical girls is a true honor for him. He says that girls can remain still if they want, but when turns, then suddenly noticed how Balsi is sharply changing. She looks at him with anger. The girl is so confused that she begins to attack Craft with reproaches to hide her excitement. Mina again grabs the boy's cloak, casting his gaze towards Bells. She shook her head, straightened her full height and followed Persia, clearly making it clear that it is not necessary to admire compliments so much. The time has passed, and the young man cooked many potions on his own, filling the whole basement. He stops, thinking. He wants to check how effective the potions are, but intentionally, he does not dare to harm himself. But suddenly his attention is distracted by a loud cry. He runs out of the house and sees how a wounded hunter named Gitaro is taken out of the forest. The guy is carefully put on the ground and they immediately begin to ask what happened. It turned out that a fight with goblins recently took place here. The hunters were able to defeat all the enemies to the ladder, but they were not ready for such a battle, and many were injured. Alfred is instantly oriented. He orders the defenders of the village to break into the patrol, and the rest of the inhabitants to hide in their homes. Together with his assistant, he brings Jutaro to the shelter and appeals to Craft for a request, whether he has a potion for treatment. Craft replies that he has a potion. The wounds of the young man were unusually deep. Balsi asks Gitaro why he did not escape when he noticed Goblin, but the guy explains that they were too close to the village, and the hunters decided that it would be too dangerous to leave everything as it was. At the end of Gitaro, he gently calls Bals his older sister. Belsia embarrasses and quickly translates a conversation to another topic. Meanwhile, Craft carefully treats the wounds of the boys and examines them carefully. Despite their efforts, the damage remains serious and deep. Cases go bad. They lose Gitaro. Belska does not know any potions that could definitely help the guy. Everyone is very afraid that wounds are fatal because of a major loss of blood. Craft stands thoughtfully, thinking. He cannot decide whether these unprocessed potions should be used, but in their village there is no doctor who would be understood in such treatment, so there was almost no choice. The guy decides to give a potion hunter. The bodice already carries the finished barrel. Craft scooped the potion with a taddy and poured directly on the patient. The thick cloud of steam immediately swept away, and it disappeared for a few minutes. Everyone around is surprised to watch what is happening. Kraft has never previously encountered such a reaction, or such a thick couple. He already begins to think that it is all in vain, as suddenly the boy opens his eyes and sits sharply. He says he does not hurt at all. The wounds have already healed. But it is impossible. Medicinal potions do not work so quickly. However, Gitaro really looks completely intact. The young guy thanked the hero because he was already recovering. For the first time in his life, the guy received treatment with herbs and incredibly rejoiced when it was so fast. Kraft immediately noted that this is a special case, and one should not expect such a result every time. They cannot believe that the potion will really restore the lost blood. But the guy feels great. Kraft asks him to be careful and closely monitor him at least tomorrow. But Chitaro, as if he did not hear what he heard, just goes to help in the field. He escapes, finally calling Belshi's older sister, what he became angry. However, the guy looks quite healthy, as if he were completely recovering. Belchia says that the elixirs should be reported to the military. Kraft replies that this is not so bad. Maybe then the village will receive an order from the army. But Belchia doubts this. She asks if the hero is ready to keep in secret what she will say next. Belchia leads the hero to a remote place where they are waiting for a small meeting with the elevator. Lift immediately reports that it has important news to them. Although the girl does not want to scare Kraft, but the nobility in the borderlands is constantly quarreling or preparing attacks. If the elixir of such force falls into the hands of only one side, it can cause a new war. They understand that the army is ready to pay a lot of money for this elixir, but for the sake of calm, it is important to keep it secret. In addition, it will allow you to easily investigate how effective this remedy is. The hero agrees but still decides to sell the elixir. Then Belzi says that he is still refraining from complaints but warns. This is just a matter of time. The boys have distributed responsibilities as follows. Balsi remains to protect the aristocrats. The elevator will be engaged in the construction of the fence, and Kraft will try again to talk to the Gutsaro. The fact is that this young man was an experienced hunter, so he would not allow goblins so easy to injure himself. Goblins do not pose a great threat to those who can fight. Belsi also thinks and admits that the master is right. So the hero goes to the field to find Yataro. He is interested in how the young worker feels, but he looks so cheerful as if he were hunting now. In addition, he even says he could go to the beast. But the hero gently refuses him from this idea. When Chataro was asked how Goblin was injured, he replies that his own weapon is already old enough and constantly dumb. The hero understands everything. Indeed, the metal began to rust. So Kraft immediately moves to the shed, where the young man left his sword. Although Gitaro is already set to exercise and train with his sword, the Kraft interferes again. His mentor strictly forbids the guy that day to perform any physical work, cooling the passion of a young warrior. Kraft finds a blade in the barn and immediately understands what happened. The guy has a broken machete of very poor quality, and even after repair, it will break again. Kraft chooses the most suitable alchemical practice, rejoicing that it has enough stones for the experiment. He enthusiastically begins the test, and in the meantime, Gita Ryu proudly tells other hunters how his wounds healed quickly. He removes the shirt and shows everyone that there is no trace on his body, no scar. Everyone is genuinely happy. They say that Kraft is wonderful, because now you can get injured without fear of consequences. But the Kraft did not want that, and it does not want people to think so. Kraft visited the lifts on the forge. The girl was sitting at work and forging something. He asks her to test her new invention on the old ammunition, which she is now repairing. He reaches her oil bottle. It is a special encouraging oil. Life is so surprised that it loses the gift of language. She said that she has already heard about it. It turns out that all the blacksmiths use it. But despite this, such a thing is very rare, because only alchemists can create it. That's why the girl was so passionate. Now, if used for forging, the strength of the product will be even greater. Especially given the skill of Lifestes, the result promises to be simply incredible. Kraft confesses that she is fond of blacksmiths. However, blacksmithing is not the most important task in life, but nevertheless, she really wants to go here. The girl goes to collect edible plants. She works tirelessly on the blade, giving all herself to make it perfect. When the blade is finally ready, Jitaro is given to try it, and the guy is delighted with the quality of the new sword. He with excitement waves with a blade, cutting different objects, so friends immediately ask him to be careful. The bodice carefully examines the machete blade, trying to evaluate its sharpness and condition. The blade remained intact, and this indicates a truly impressive result. If the blade was hardened in the usual way, it would be revealed as a glass. However, due to the oil, its strength has increased many times over. Now Kraft has decided to use other potions. They cover the blade with this potion. Kraft mysteriously advises Gitaro to test a machete on a tree. He jumps high and crashes into a branch that protrudes forward. He cuts off the branch without effort. Going along the branch, the sword inadvertently affects the tree trunk, and it also begins to lean. Gitaro is satisfied. Now everything is cut easily like oil. Everyone here noticed that the tree also began to fall. The children were stunned by surprise. They solidify, looking at the fallen tree trunk. Gitaro is loudly shouting. Kraft is satisfied with the result. Now this blade is not just a mash, but something much more powerful. A new elixir is an exacerbation oil. The hero laughs at Leifa, because she was the first to say this name aloud. Leifa was really worried. There was no hint on her face. Kraft immediately apologized to her. She asks Kraft next time to warn all the actions so that no one will suffer. The boys release Gitaro, ordering him to use the oil economically and be careful with all the tools. The young man joyfully escapes, shouting loudly that he will now show everyone what he is capable of. The elevator closes her face with her hands. She warned how dangerous it is. They are surprised to watch the machete cut the object so easily, as if it is a magic sword. Like a blacksmith, life can determine what this sword is capable of. Kraft assures that the effect of sharpening oil will last all day with normal use, but if cut trees, only half a day. If used for all tools, the bottles will only be enough for a week. They have magic stones to make more, but now this is not the biggest problem. Leifa says they need to stop Alfred immediately. But Kraft only sighs with regret. It's impossible. In the evening, when the dream does not go, Kraft decides to go for a walk. He believes that today he has done all his affairs. The elixir reserves are replenished. Unclear moans came from Kyle's room. The hero looks inside and notices that the guy breathes hard in his dream, as if he was tormented by a terrible nightmare. He literally curled up with pain. Kraft sounds the guy, trying to attract his attention. The hero tries to wake up the guy, but Persia appears here and asks him to be quieter, not to wake the prince. She assures that nothing special is happening. Kraft cannot believe his eyes. He is amazed. The girl noted that now even better than usual. The guy can only sleep normally because of healing potions, but sometimes he has attacks when the action of the potion goes away. Kraft is surprised that Kyle's condition is so bad. The girl explains that he always tries to hide it, so it's hard to notice when something is wrong with him. It turns out that the guy has a heart problem. Now Kraft understands why the security guard cares so carefully about the aristocrat. Persia can only help the guy with his physical strength. She wants to ask him for something, but he already guesses what he agrees immediately. The alchemist is convinced that he will definitely be able to create a cure for the disease. The hero frankly confesses that Kyle is as a younger brother, so he is ready for everything for him. The girl is inspired and asks him to start. Degrees of crafts. He goes to the library to find the information he needs. It finds records of the necessary plants, but it will be difficult to get them. These plants grow in hard-to-reach and harsh conditions. You need to go to the swamp. There is full of dangerous monsters. Now Kraft understands why special healing potions appear so rarely on the market. It is extremely difficult to collect the necessary ingredients for them. There is a swamp nearby. Kraft decides to visit there. In the swamp, giant and dangerous Hydra tea. Kraft watches them from afar, using magic. It is a magic of tracking that allows it to see long distances. He notices that Hydra is pouring in the swamp. The fact is that the Hydra is able to control a huge part of the swamp due to their body and many heads, so they are rightly considered masters. Kraft realizes that he will not be able to collect herbs here. When he returned, Leifa wondered where he was. The guy replied that he went in search of herbs for a new potion and really found them, but could not collect. Kraft explains that he is disturbed by Hydra. Due to the fact that his field of view is too wide, he cannot hit them with one shot. Lafayette cannot hide shock when learning about Hydra. Kraft asks why it struck him so. She replied that he did not even suspect something that once happened in the village of Nomov, which was in this place. The girl, crying, said that the Hydra was destroying the village. Usually, these creatures do not leave their homes and do not pose a threat if they are not approaching. But this time, something strange happened. Suddenly they gathered, and for no apparent reason, attacked the dwarves. Lifty said that even now they sometimes appear. Those painful memories are disturbed by the girl. After the story of the Elector, Kraft sat fixed next to her, finding words and silently thinking about what he heard. The girl is interested in his intentions. He explains that he is going to look for medicinal herbs, and will do it on his own to go unnoticed for Hydra. He does not plan to fight, because the Hydra does not show aggression, if not disturbed. But here, the elevator confidently states that he will go with him. She asks Kraft not to overstress and fully trusts his experience. She agrees that he should become a leader. After that, together they decide to collect the team. He collects trusted people in the house and shares with them his plan to go to the swamp on medicinal herbs, warning what dangers can chat on him in those parts. He does not mention Kyle's disease. He especially needs teammates. After a short pause, Persia still decides to vote. She appeals to the surprised Alfred to take care of children. Alfred realizes that Persia probably has its own reasons for this trip, so he agrees. Jotaro also seeks to join. Although the reaction to his candidacy has shot him a little from the Panther, he is still sure that he will leave with others. Jotaro will become an archer and will help the team from afar. If Luffy and Persia are left in the vanguard, they will be able to protect the craftsmen. Now there are 4 of them. Kraft notes that Luffy clearly thought about something of her own, but there is no time to ask her. Finally, everyone is ready to travel. The hero asks to bring only a small manual luggage with him, because he will carry everything he needed in his own storage. He wanted all team members to remain as smart as possible. Persia does not even dress. Her light armor and so perfectly sits on her. Meanwhile, the elevator appears in front of its comrades. It is dressed in full metal armor and holds a huge hammer. Kraft was indignant because he hoped that the satellites would be easier. However, the girl only asks him to look and not interfere. It jumps high and moves rapidly, demonstrating incredible agility in a new outfit. Kraft cannot hide surprise. He did not expect it. Only Gitaro remained. He updated his armor and now looks like a real robber or pirate. It turned out that the guy put on all his best clothes. Kraft does not dare tell him that he does not look too good. Kraft advises you to grate the arrow with oil. If suddenly does not work from the first time, nothing wrong. They will just come back and try again. Then he advises the whole team not to be ashamed and boldly use any elixirs that they need. Persia recalls that they were taught to use potions in the army only as a last resort, but not an army here. Here in the first place of settlers, and this is more important than all the rules. But her thoughts do not end. Persia confidently states that she will not have injuries. She simply does not intend to receive any scratches. So the team moves the swamp. Kraft chose a trail on which the least Hydra is to avoid unnecessary clashes. If so, all the Hydra from the district will crawl here. Kraft begins to share with us his plan. According to the Levi plan, the Hydra in front should be attacked. Persia will approach the right, Jotaro will help at a distance, and as a last resort, Kraft will join the battle. When they get the right place, Kraft quickly collects the necessary herbs, and the whole team runs together. At this point, Levi asks everyone to silence. They notice how the Hydra grabbed the crocodile and squeezes it in the arms. The hybrid absorbs the crocodile, swallowing it completely. The monster rises above the swamp, striking in its giant size. This is such a dangerous Hydra. The elevator orders everyone to be alert. Lefia fearlessly goes directly to the Hydra. This monster is really impressive in its giant size. Hydra turned out to be much larger than everyone expected, so Kraft suggested retreating. But the bodice shouted that they can handle the monster and be late. A huge monster hangs over a little girl. She confidently stops the fierce attack of the monster, putting her hammer under his crazy blow. Kraft and Jotaro are surprised as she didn't even shudder. He thinks of what technique this girl uses. The coat of arms of Lefos is designed for Kraft, but it is able to use combat equipment. This testifies to her many years of workouts. Finally, one of the bodyguards suddenly attacks. Her sword shines from the spicy oil she had just used to sharpen. Kraft still doubts whether it can help against a huge monster. Meanwhile, the girl uses her technique called Veer Phoenix. Her sword cuts the monster's neck. She flew past him, leaving behind only a shadow from her blow. All 4 are fated with surprise when the Hydra in their eyes is literally scattered into pieces. The guard with noise falls into the water, and behind it in the swamp will fly fragments of her crushed neck. Gitaro exclaims enthusiastically without holding back his surprise to the girl. The girl enthusiastically notes that the potion works great. Meanwhile, Gitaro pulls a magic stone from the body of the monster. Kraft still looks at the guy and thinks that he is strikingly like a bandit. Suddenly, the elevator begins to laugh. She laughs louder and louder, and her comrades are already beginning to worry. The girl suddenly picks up and rushes somewhere. All are confused and stunned by what happened. At that moment, the knight calls not to be late and catch up with it as soon as possible, and the first one rushes out. She rushes for him surprisingly quickly. Kraft and Jotaro are rushing after her. But when they finally catch up with the girls, there is a spooky picture before their eyes. A real massacre around them. Both rushed to another Hydra and immediately dismembered it directly in the eyes of stunned guys. Despite the fact that they used their most powerful strokes, The elixir of endurance does not allow them to be tired. Seeing this, the monster decides to retreat. But the elevator is convinced that this monster is no longer escaped. Kraft and Gitaro stood away, watching the chaos that unfolded in front of them. They have to shy away from the impact themselves, and they are angry with this girl's negligence. There was silence. In the swamp are crushed Hydra. The whole team has frozen in place, watching this scene carefully. This moment, Leafa finally becomes aware and pays attention to the boys. They are in complete fear. She smiles satisfied, although she confesses that she regrets the change of the plan. Kraft nervously assures her that everything is fine, and there are no grounds for excitement. The girl confidently leaned on her hammer. Now she was able to at least take revenge on the gnome village. Kraft agrees with her. The elevator thanks him for the opportunity. The knight also decides to speak, justified by the fact that she has no choice but to go into battle. However, her words do not sound very convincing. However, it will be sufficient for her that the master is not angry because of the failure of the plan, because they still managed to get the right grass. Kraft thinks whether she was sent here through the rage of Lift. But the reason is different. After all, everyone returns to the village. Finally, the young man prepared a legendary potion. Without the test, this cannot be given to Kyle. But no one to check. All the peasants are healthy. And here the guard suddenly breaks into the room, who has been waiting all this time until the potion was prepared. After learning about this problem, she states that he will now get under the waterfall and, if necessary, let him get sick instead of others. Kraft is thinking about this information. Yes, the girl is asked if she had to get sick in the same way, but her character is hardened by training, and even the waterfall does not overcome it. However, all her devotion does not lead to anything. At this point, Kyle appears, and hardly asks everyone to calm down. Everyone is surprised to look at Kyle, thinking where he came from here. They greet him on a good morning, and Kyle simply moves to the table where the test tubes stand. Somehow he feels that these potions are prepared for him. That's right, Kyle thanks the young man. The guy quickly grabs the bottle and drinks it. No one has time to stop it. Everyone around is amazed and cannot believe their eyes. It is already late to stop the guy, although Lefia is trying to warn that no one has checked these potions. So there are no problems, because the guy sincerely believes in his skill. The guy says he feels much better, and everyone around us with him. He sincerely thanks Kraft for help. However, the guy turns to the aristocrat with maximum seriousness. He asks him not to lie. The guy tries to assure him that the potion really helped him feel better, and Kraft is adamant. He insists that Kyle is telling the truth. The spread of false rumors about the action of potions can cause many problems. Hearing the words of Kraft, the guards felt the frustration and lost their morale. The fact is that the master was only half sure that the potion could cure the guy. Potions like this help to heal from colds and flu. But these diseases occur under the influence of external factors, and Kyle was born with this ailment. Kraft was not sure whether the potion would help cope with a congenital disease. The security guard exclaims to Kraft, not believing that Kyle will remain so forever. But when the hero voices another idea that should work, everyone around the subscribe. Crawford turns to Kyle, asking him to endure a little more with endurance elixirs. He assures that everything is used to everything and will no longer be deceived. The security guard unnoticed to his business, choosing craft instead of force. She apologizes for raising her voice and adds that there is nothing wrong with this. Such a reaction is quite natural. The girl tells that she often leaves a safe village to make different things, and this time he goes with the boy. The elevator is surprised that the legendary potion never happened. Kraft suggests that this is probably a special disease because doctors could not help anything. He understood that therapeutic magic was not able to cope with hereditary diseases, but hoped for a miracle. However, there is another way, though it is more complicated. While Kyle can restrain the disease with the help of healing elixirs, and the settlers should expand the village, he intended to establish his own guild of adventurers here. This is really useful for everyone, because the village always needs powerful defenders. There is a potion that can heal Kyle, but the marsh grasses are not enough for it, and the necessary ingredients are extremely rare. The required grass is mainly growing in an extremely dangerous place, in the very heart of the dragon's homes. The guy with a firm determination promises himself that he is sure to cure Kyle. A group of travelers moves forward, overcoming the difficult way. They overcame a considerable distance to settle in a distant border village. On the way, they have repeatedly happened various monsters, so everyone feels anxious, fearing that they will eventually find a neglected settlement. Quietly, almost imperceptible to others, one of the travelers confesses that he really hopes to meet someone special there. Travelers assure that they are ready for the harshest trials. However, when they got to their destination, they had no idea that they would open a real flowering city. There are large houses everywhere. The streets are clean, and a new well appeared nearby. Lifting gets acquainted with travelers. Some of the group, as long as she really asks this village for only half a year. She sinfully confirms that this is true. He adds that she has high hopes on the newcomers. They are striking and surprised. During this time, the village became noticeable. The settlers began to invite Despair to open a local guild of adventurers here. And suddenly someone exclaims, "Master, you need to do something." This is his comrade Redak, a real adventure seeker. Kraft looks at him with surprise. Once the hero worked with him in one team. The young man is questioned by Redak as he was here. Did he really come to protect the new ones? The editor replies that yes, but this is not the whole reason. Redak came to do his job. Kraft shuddered with surprise. The fact is that the Redak has a rank of C among adventurers, and its companions are also experienced soldiers. Kraft cannot understand why they were in such a debt. But Redak explains, "Here is full of monsters, and now that the village appears, they will be able to hunt without worrying about stocks." Redak also admits that it regrets that Kraft has left the band. Kraft is embarrassed and does not know how to respond to it. The hero wants to spill in a few words with Redak. He remembers how he joined his group at the beginning of the journey. When everyone was new to the adventures, they all seemed wonderful then. But over time, his friends gained more experience, and he still couldn't get better. Then for Kraft, their business turned into a burden. He felt that he did not reach the general level, and eventually decided to leave the group. After that, he joined different teams, but everywhere he was waiting for the same fate. Kraft tells the Radish about it, adding that such inevitable never leads to good. He is wondering if the hero knows how he was nicknamed in the guild. Kraft is familiar with this nickname, a self-playing magician. It turned out that in reality, only a few people were seriously treated. But even then, these people did not represent anything. However, they had another nickname. Kraft knew as a mentor of all beginners who dreamed of becoming real adventure seekers. Adventurers who ended up with him in one team were ashamed that they did not even want to mention it. For Kraft, it was something completely new. He did not even hear about the similar. Although, thanks to Kraft, they achieved considerable success, they still had to expel it from the band. Many still feel guilty of it. Kraft decides to look at the time when he taught young adventure seekers and, together with his friends, went on a journey. He recalls how people began to avoid it over time, and in the end they divorced. The hero is surprised to realize that despite all his doubts about his own importance, even in the guild were those who were indifferent. Redak said that he and his friends decided to thank Kraft for kindness, helping to develop his village. The guy extends his hand to shake. Therefore, the village is growing rapidly. There are many reasons for this, but one of the main was the discovery of the Aventurist Guild. In these parts, the monster always swept. Now this place is attracted to adventure seekers who seek to hunt here. This makes the village gradually developing and new jobs are emerging. People are becoming more and more free homes are left. Now in the village, everyone has united to expand the hotel. And this is not all. A shop has opened in the city where potions and weapons are sold. Now the crowd is constantly folding near her. The store is completely filled with adventure seekers. The owner stands behind the counter, looked around at the crowd. So many buyers did not have. She confesses to herself that she does not even know where to start. The attention of everyone is chained to it. Every word is caught on the fly. Kraft stands away and understands that most came to just see Sylar. Life is raging around, like a holiday for the whole world. And here, Kraft suddenly calls someone. Here's a small Kyle. He leads the hero to the negotiation room. While Kraft pours tea, he wonders if something happened. The guy replies that they need to talk about an important thing. Along with him are his sister and guardian Belcia. At this point, the idea was that the village was needed, and this idea was suddenly caught by Kraft. He did not even realize that this place had no name. The fact is that all previous attempts to establish the settlement here ended in failure. Then Kraft suggested a simple idea. Let's call it in honor of the leader, the village of Kyle. Alfred and Belcia have already suggested the same, but Kraft has no ideas. He notes that Kyle's achievements are well known to all, and it is unlikely that anyone will deny. Belcia agrees with delight, but Kyle emphasizes that they created this village together. With the arrival of new people, the village will develop faster. He doubts that his name is suitable for the name of the village. Kraft is convinced that this is an ideal option, but suggests thinking together. Then he appeals to Bals to share his ideas, but she stubbornly replies that there are no other options other than Kale Village. and cannot be. Then the hero turns to the mine, but offers an even worse name, the Village of Craft. Although Kyle likes this name, Craft proposes to call Liffey, but the main merit in this case belongs to him. Even Balls is ready to admit it when suddenly someone knocks on the door. The elevator goes into the room and immediately decides that Beltacraft is deciding something. Perhaps who will be the main one in the village. She already wanted to go quietly to not interfere, but Craft notices her and invites her to go. She dealt with the problem and also joined the creative process. She suggested calling this place a Twilight settlement. However, others denied. They say such a name was heard cloudy, as if the village was already declining. But the name is inspired by logic. The coat of arms of the protagonist just decorates the symbol of Twilight. After all, he is not just an alchemist, but a dark alchemist. And it was because of his special abilities that he led the village to the level of well-being that it enjoys now. Kyle believes that this is a good name, but Craft does not share his thoughts. Beltsy assures that the sunset heralds misery. Kyle offers another name, Dawn Village. This name also symbolizes the beginning of a great journey. This is the case, according to the bodice, the border settlement should be called. Balsy agrees, because Kile has suggested this name. After consulting with a mine, the guy solemnly announces a new name, the Village of Golden Dawn. All immediately begin to praise Kyle enthusiastically, not paying attention to Craft and his words. The hero hears only as a guy, going for the necessary papers, tells Lifa about his desire to name the village in honor of the Craft. It takes a little more time. Craft feels the right moment. He approaches Lifa and turns to her. The hero reminds the girl that he had long wanted to get out and collect some ore. Now is the right opportunity. He plans to get iron, copper, mithril, and adamantitis. The hero offers to his company to make a company and shows her on the map just where he was about to go. The predictions of the Artisans Guild. It is there that the highest chances of finding rare minerals. Considering the old map, Froundus Li Fei is fully concentrated without bringing his eyes off from the desired point. Krep explains that it is not easy to get here. The forest around literally lifts monsters. At that moment, the elevator understands why the village needs the help of adventure seekers. In fact, you can contact the Adventurers Guild with a request to provide escort and pay their services at the expense of the village. Ore production will take a long time. However, the locks can be made of better steel and treated with special sharpening potions to work faster. And Lifa, like a real two-fish, can help with the search for ore. The hero says he wants to try something else. Liffey monitors him closely. She doesn't like that the guy hides something again. However, Craft is not going to open its secret. Finally, everyone prepared. Rodek, who recently joined the group, sincerely thanks Craft for organizing this new adventure for them. Craft in response states that he took only the best people in the village. However, in some way, the team also joined the Zitar, although Craft, in fact, did not plan to invite him. So the team goes on the road to get the right ore. This is also the first step to rescuing Kyle. Reddick rotely asks why Liffey is watching the Craft so carefully, but he is only frying. Together with the Reddock detachment, the guy goes in search of rare metals. Reddles, like a team leader, introduces a newcomer to his comrades. He also has a swordsman symbol. He is a little surprised by all those present when he reports that he was in the same team once with Craft. The group has another girl with a gloomy look, Lagal. She is a local trace. Craft welcomes her as familiar. They have already met in the village, although they still had no opportunity to communicate. They confess to each other with a smile as a pleasure in dating. In fact, when Craft, along with others, was in the adventurers team, he fell in love with her. But later he realized that nothing would work between them. After all, she loves Reddock, so he rejected these thoughts. It is strange that they had to meet again. Ratik introduces everyone to the attendees. It is a priest of Bap, a sorcerer Bardak, and a warrior. It turns out that Craft knows both. The Chaos Magician is extremely powerful, and his magic is strong, even though he has no generic coat of arms. And this mug is stronger than any ordinary person. It is not consistent, but always tells everything you need to know. Then Gitaro strongly interferes with the conversation and declares himself loudly, introducing himself to a young hunter. Reddock immediately asks the guy whether he was left. It offended it, because it is his best clothes. Reddock tries to cheer him up. He says he looks like a real nameless robber like everyone he admires. Gitaro is indignant. The group goes deep into the forest, and on the way desperately fights monsters. Reddock asked if they would allow them to pick up wonderful magic stones and other valuable materials from the bodies of monsters. Litia nodded back, confirming that it was allowed. Craft praises adventurers, saying that they exceeded all his hopes. Everything is due to endurance potions. They say the warrior and the ranger. They really help in battle. The magician complains that there is nothing like him, but the artisan immediately replies that something has saved for the magician. This is a man's potion. Craft extends this bardock. Everyone is happy about because the thing is not cheap, but also has legendary quality. Reddick assures that in this way they will be able to overcome even a Cyclops. Life is worried that after such words, luck can turn away from them. Suddenly, travelers notice a cave nearby. The characters will have to enter there because the pendulum points to a large amount of ore inside. Mag and Alchemist simultaneously create light balls. The soldiers take the torches. The heroes have already found what to illuminate the path, so they boldly go into the dark cave. Travelers go further into the cave. Water drips from the ceiling, and lizards are fussy along the walls. The corridor they go is so narrow that it is almost impossible to pass by two. But the elevator, carefully examining the soil, confidently stated that there should be ore. Craft could not understand how she managed to determine this. Life, being a thieves, is able to recognize ores even in complete darkness. During the descent, the elevator carefully checks the condition of the soil. Everyone rely on her and sincerely hope that this place has not yet become a dungeon. According to Reddick, there is no typical aura of the dungeon. It's just a regular cave. In dungeons, mysterious places from another world, there are powerful monsters. However, it is there that many rare values can be found. Meanwhile, the corridor is gradually expanding. Heroes meet 3 stone lizards, monsters with thick, almost impenetrable skin. The adventurers instantly navigated and began a coordinated attack on the monsters. The lizard with a swing beats a sharp claw on the shield of the warrior. The ranger pulls his bow to his bow, hoping that his arrows were soaked in severity. The arrow hit the forehead of the lizard, and he immediately falls dead. This inspires adventurers. They decide to search the cave more carefully. The battle with lizards continues. Ranger operated with a warrior who covered her with a shield. Finally, the battle was over. The message confirms, with lizards is over. Now they only have to collect the necessary materials and move on. Craft notes that the boys are really a good team. With a little tight, Craft remembers the times when he was a searcher. Reddick noted that it was easy to handle the lizards. His skill of an experienced adventure seeker is not in doubt. However, both recognize that hot oil has also played a role. Reddles are genuinely rejoiced that the craft has become better. The hero gladly supports this opinion. At this point, the priest from Rank's team expresses his desire to test his abilities. Everyone agrees to move it for the other time. Suddenly, Left notes that something happened to the earth. She finds ore deposits there. There is also a mithril, though not so much. The artifact attracts the girl deeper into the cave. She confesses that she really wants to go there. They come across a free place. Suddenly, the girl exclaims happily from delight. Inside the huge cave, everything shines from the crystals of ore. The girl, forgetting caution, rapidly runs to them. She could not imagine such a large number of mithril ore, and could not imagine. She could not think that she would come across her here. Everyone sincerely welcomed the girl when suddenly a loud, unexpected sound is heard. From the darkness, the glowing eye suddenly flashes, and Craft rushes, calling the bodice to return immediately. The Cyclops screams at the girl, and she corresponds to a frightened cry. It emerges from the darkness and hangs over the heroes, forcing them to feel true. The boys scream with Lifa, begging back. Their voice trembles with fear. The traveler gradually begins to understand who he really is. This is a Cyclops. The monster rises in all its formidable height, and Litia lifts his eyes without fear, and looks at him just in the eye. Reddick immediately rushes towards the monster and closes the girl, protecting her from danger. He orders lifts and Sizi to retreat, and the muzzle asks to stay and help him. In his opinion, the Fardak should use all its attacking magic, and Bap will support each of his actions. Adventurers quickly take up the case, acting in harmony and clearly. Mortis's axe causes a devastating blow, but Craft immediately notices. Something is wrong here. The Cyclops cleverly bounced back, avoiding the impact. The monster lifts his head for the second time, and again gives out a loud, protracted roar. He strikes himself, and the boys miraculously manage to escape. The muzzle takes a blow to his shield. At that moment, the soulless body of the warrior flies back. BEP is trying to call him, but suddenly feels someone with someone's hand with the coat of arms. Here is an alchemist. He calls for warriors not to stop and continue the battle, and he promises to help the wounded with his healing potions. It leans over a fallen mortar, gets a bottle with a potion and uses it. The warrior finally comes to his senses. His well-being improves significantly. He instantly blows on his feet and rushes into battle, struck without delay. Everyone around is surprised. This man recovered much faster than even experienced adventurers could assume. It turns out that the Cyclops is very agile. The editor appeals to Sarala with a request. They shot him just in his eye. But she, watching Morta causes the hail of Cyclopes, says it is impossible. The monster moves too quickly. The Cyclops recedes back again, jumping away from danger. The monster turned out to be extremely strong, so Redox notes that it was a one-sided battle. Kraft considers if he can do something at all. Fire and wind in the dungeons are too dangerous. It is better not to use them. He does not understand the magic of the earth, and he remembers almost nothing about attacks on a large area. He has the idea. The alchemist raises his hand, and snowflakes were circulated around her. All views are directed at the hero. People do not hide surprise. They are amazed by his act. Kraft creates an elongated object in the hand. This is his new technique, an icy cavity dart. The guy kisses and throws the dart straight into the monster. The charming shell flies through the monster's chest. The Cyclops twisted in pain. All around stunned. They have never seen such magic. The place of impact is gradually covered with a thin layer of ice. Reddles gathers their people around him. He orders Sori to target directly into the eye, and together with Mordor, he rushes to the Cyclops with renewed vigor. The warrior applies his blows, the sword of the storm and the devastating blow of the wolf. The warriors rush to the Cyclops, causing him a devastating blows. Finally, Sorel presses on the trigger and the ball hit the target. The monster suddenly fades and begins to slowly shake sideways. Redok immediately realizes that the giant will fall, so it quickly gives an order to retreat, so that no one is crushed. The Cyclops lies on the ground, overthrown with a blow. In his eye is stuck Or arrow, and in his chest sticks out a skillfully made projectile. Finally the guys finish their business. They rejoice and hug the craft, because it was so strongly helped them. Laffy rejoices, because travelers have won the extremely strong monster. Kraft praised Radoka. He noted that he had coped perfectly, and expected such a result. However, the Edges disagreed with that. Redix says that the skill helped to overcome the monster. Redix notes that the alchemist has mastered incredible magic. Sorrel agrees, adding that in fact they have only struck. The hero was glad to hear these words. Kraft was glad that his magic and skills finally became useful to friends. Now that the cave has become safe, Litia can no longer wait to extract ore. She is sent to do it. Meanwhile, other adventure seekers decide to collect materials from a fallen monster. They go directly to the case. Travelers were talking to each other, assuring that the materials around, but the monster is simply unbearable. Someone from the detachment suddenly called the master, urging to get to work. This is Laffy. She cheerfully waves Kaylee, calls the hero to join her and get the ore together. However, full of inspiration, she copes perfectly on her own. Finally, they have 4 barrels with ore, but Litia feels that it would not be even more. The girl regret notes that inside this stone should be even more valuable, but her Kalo turned out to be powerless in front of a solid breed. The grafted is ready to this moment. He is about to test his new weapon. The elementary elevation is looking at him. When asked by the girl, the hero replies that it is a magical explosion. He explains, when he does not restrain her magic, it breaks out and destroys everything around. Lifting is sure that it will not end with good. He crafts the devices so that there will be no explosion without his signal. But it's not about that. She is afraid of the explosion itself. Kraft smiles and confidently tells the girl that he has never been defeated, so this time everything will work out. Meanwhile, another adventure seeker approaches the heroes and is wondering what new surprises are preparing the main character. But Lafiel immediately requires that everyone gets back. She is worried about people and orders them to hide behind stones. Kraft reassures, there is nothing to worry about. Gitaro is full of curiosity. He does not suffer to see the new invention of the hero, but the elevator believes that it would be better to do without this spectacle. Reddles are surprised because Kraft is a true master of magic, but Lydia is convinced that heroes also have something too irrational. She managed to completely convince only Soro. Others gathered around Kraft, carefully examining its new device. Kraft is about to start counting. He confesses Lafayette that she is very worried. He tightens his ears with his hands and begins to count. Girls, because of the stones, wary of him. In the end, the explosion was about to happen, and suddenly the explosion is rolled by a powerful roar. Even girls who hid behind a bunch of stones lightly affected the explosive wave. They notice the poor adventurers and aircraft that fly away, rejected by a powerful explosion. There is smoke everywhere, and only cough can be heard in this thick curtain. The elevator notices the Kraft, who is suffocating from smoke. She immediately addresses him. Kraft feels relief that he did not try it on Cyclops, but she is convinced that the guy went too far. Kraft distracts the angry bodice, pointing his finger behind her back. There, in the crack, crystals sparkle. They now have the opportunity to get even more ore. Kraft says it is good that they were at risk of using his magical explosion. Liffey began to tell that if you use the explosives properly, it can be very useful. For example, if you put it in a hole in a rock and install a special way, you can easily punch even the strongest stone. Kraft is admired by the fact that she has managed to reach only one explosive. However, it does not allow the craft to distract the conversation in the other direction. She tells him that the jokes are over. At this point, the hero suddenly hears some strange sound behind. Angry adventure seekers who need to talk to the hero about something important rise from the gunpowder. That night, Kraft stayed on his knees for 2 hours, listening carefully to security guidelines. All the trust he just managed to conquer instantly disappeared. A few days later, they returned to the village. The locals rejoiced that the heroes managed to overcome the Cyclops. The children immediately ran to them with a curious question whether the mithril managed to find. And for them, it was almost a real holiday. The young man congratulated Kraft, and the property quietly settled next to him. He also greeted in response, and then the young man asked where Lafon was. Travelers in the village could not believe that they really managed to get mithril. They asked impatiently when the sale began. Lefin tried to restrain them. It was because of this that there was a delay. Traders can't wait to get a mithril and are ready to pay any cost. Kyle suggested postponing the report before the arrival of Lahan. The hero supported this idea. The girl sat next to him. Is it normal that she is not near Kale now? She was always near him and never went far. And now even in the eye he cannot look. It took a little time as the Li Fan appeared. She was guilty of apologizing for being late, explaining that she was almost a victim of a crowd of merchants. Kraft immediately noticed her hair disheveled. Davidi, the elephant suggested that the report discuss. They went to survey the cave, which was found in a planned place. Stone lizards, ghost lights, and gigantic woods, as well as other amazing creatures, were waiting for them. Kyle noted that the cave looks dangerous. The girl agreed with him, but added that, nevertheless, they managed to quickly get a large amount of ore. She explained that there were 5 main reasons. The first reason was a magical explosion. The second is the oil. The third is a special storage location. And the fourth is a reliable escort. Kraft completed her story, explaining that the 5th reason is life and understanding of his hands. She thanked the editor's group for coping with everything quickly and without any injuries. The most important thing is the endurance potion that has become decisive in battles. Without it, they would definitely not have the strength to defeat the Cyclops. It is because of this that the monster is nicknamed the Murderer of Adventurers. Cyclops pursue their victims until the end. Due to such perseverance, many careless people lost their lives. Kyle felt relieved that they had to survive. In the meantime, Kraft mentioned mithril. He noted that it seems that someone had put new ones earlier. From this thought, the girl suddenly swept a cold sweat. Kyle suggested that he still not allow him to leave the village. Lefin agreed. She added that a real revolution has recently had a real revolution in the craft. Masters who could not work with this metal before suddenly learned to do it. Because of this, the demand for mithril has increased instantly. So they should wait for the price to rise to the maximum and only then sell. Kraft noted that it was just a personal request, but could they sell their equipment a little to the adventurers who have recently moved here? Kyle said it was a great idea and suggested making a plan. Thanks to the money that the Redox team has earned, they will be able to quickly update their equipment. Therefore, the Elephophone was to take the manufacture of metallic ingots in the morning. And Kraft, meanwhile, wanted to ask the girl about another business. A few days later, Lafone approached the guy. She said she had done everything he asked for and called to see him. She hopes he will like him. The hero also dreams of it. He is no longer eager to see her. The girl has almost no doubt. Lifon showed a boys a cauldron where you can create alchemical things. The young man looked carefully and smiled, said he was wonderful. The engraving on it also impressed it with their beauty. This is a true work of art. She is really a craftsman. The girl suggested to move it to the boy's alchemy. He would have to send it to his repository. The hero lifted the thing into his hands, and suddenly everything began to crack around. Kraft did not understand what happened. He suddenly fell. Lafon immediately asked if everything was fine with him. Kraft replied that when he touched him, many information began to rage in his head. A similar situation happened to a girl when she first created a special anvil. It was very surprised. Perhaps there is some special property in the coat of arms of the master? The guy covered the wave of information. It seemed that his head was about to explode. And this new portion of knowledge appeared when it was the most needed. So he decided to try the boiler at the same time. Kraft began to pour different liquids into the cauldron and gently stirred everything inside. Everything shone inside. Lifon thought it was extremely good. The young man used magic, and everything around instantly sowed with bright light. The girl asked if everything was prepared. He answered with a smile that everything succeeded. Now we have a strengthening oil for mithril. If you use it with high-quality mithril, you will get hard mithril. The metal for the whole class is better and stronger. Lifon used his ability to analyze. She assured that the metal would be of the highest quality. So the team decided not to delay and immediately try this method. The girl departed and a little later returned, gladly shouting that she has a great news. She decided to create a new hammer and anvil and learned a lot about weapons and tools. Now she is able to do so much she couldn't. Even though Kraft was passionate about saying that it was incredible. But the girl replied that he was incredible. They are only obliged to him, and she thanked this boy. The guy was embarrassed and began to justify himself. They say he did not do anything, it just happened. But when she saw that she was glad, he could not hold back smiles. Leffen suggested to create something new. Now she will have so much work. Only then did the guy realize that she did not hear his words at all. 2 months have passed since then, and no events have occurred during this time. The knight told Kraft that he had already visited there and showed the boy a flower of ragweed. Kyle wondered if it was the same legendary flower. Kraft in response confessed that he simply asked the editor directly because he wanted to find out if this flower really existed here. The girl watches the hero who stands near the wall. Meanwhile, the hero looks at the ragweed flower. The knight told that they spent a lot of time, but they were able to accurately determine the place they were looking for. If they move directly this way, the journey will take several days. But if you choose the right road, you can get only in a day or 2. Kraft asked if they had not tried this with endurance potions. As a result, it turned out that they raced faster than a horse on a full jump. For an ordinary person, such a trip would take about a month. The man wondered if he was there. The knight nodded and explained that they tried to come as close as possible, remaining unnoticed. The people in the room were amazed. He had no feathers and his body was green. It seemed like a real green dragon. Crafts noted that they were lucky because the enemy could not fly. In addition, rumors are spread between people that this opponent has not only powerful protection, but also great power. However, everything becomes much simpler if you know something about your enemy. The guy wanted to see one important thing. Kyle wondered if they were already discussing how to win it. Kraft only nodded and said something like this. They discussed the plan on how to defeat the dragon. Kyle notes that it is too dangerous because it is a real dragon. He does not understand why they fight him at all. The hero replied that they needed to collect many such flowers. It turned out that they are an important ingredient for the manufacture of medicines that can heal Kyle, and will also be needed to create an elixir. Kraft promised that the dragon would win, make an elixir from this flower, and cure Kyle's disease. Every night everyone was glad because they hoped that Mr. Kyle's illness was finally curing. However, Kyle himself said with a sad smile that even the hero would not be able to do so. It will not allow this. He cannot allow another person to risk him. He categorically disagrees with this plan. Kraft was not surprised by such an answer. He expected it to hear. Kyle said that this is not even discussed, because they risk their lives every day for the sake of this case. The girl confidently said that she was ready to give her life for him, and the guy understood it well. However, he does not imagine how to treat his illness if it can hurt others. He knows that if something happens to him through him, he will never forgive it. Kraft said he was a wonderful and caring leader, but the hero explained that it is necessary not only for himself. The young man did not understand what was talking about, so the hero asked him to look at the map carefully. It turned out that the dragon's den is located where they are going to lay the road. There are many important tasks for this settlement, but the main thing is to build a road that will connect it with the city. Of particular importance is that this route will connect with 2 neighboring countries. But residents will only be able to cope with this task when they finally solve the problem with the dragon. But are they really able to defeat the dragon? Even the whole army would like to pass a meeting with at least one such creature. However, Kraft replied that they had a chance. It was here that the best monster hunters gathered. That is why he created the Guild of Adventures in this city. They have a lot of strength to repel any dangers. They also have medicinal potions and strong mithril ammunition. Serious problems are unlikely. Alfred agreed with the hero. Kyle will not allow trouble. But suddenly Kraft added that he has another reason. If they are able to create 2 elixirs, and one of them will hand in the Margrave Baylord, is it not a great achievement for Kyle? Alfred and the girl repeated the words of the hero about the ghostly medicine and the victim. Kyle watched them carefully. The words that it will be a great achievement for Mr. Kyle inspired them and added confidence. The young man stood in despair. His fists trembled, squeezing tightly. He pleased to wait a little more. Then Kraft assured that he could create this elixir, and he will help to cure Kyle, becoming an unprecedented achievement. Alfred and the girl agreed with the plan of the boy and assured that they would help him with everyone. Kyle asked them to wait a little. He suddenly ran before them and strictly ordered silent, not allowing to say everything he would like. This is not what he wants. He does not need a recognition or medicine. Others may be affected through it, and that is what he tries to avoid. He couldn't stand it. He pleaded not to risk their life for him. The boy wept bitterly. The servants were very worried about the boy. Then Kraft decided to ask Kyle to apologize for making him worry. You lightly clapped him on his head and promised that you would open their secret plan. They went outside. The hero asked Jotaro whether everything was prepared, and he confidently replied that everything was ready. There is enough space, so there will be no problems. He can start. Everyone realized that the guy designed to do. He stopped her and noted that it was only her opinion, because he checked everything more than once, even with Jotaro. So he tried to reassure Kyle. The man asked the girl to understand him. Kraft warned Kyle to look carefully, because something incredible will happen. Jotaro confidently pulled the bowstrings. A loud explosion came. People were stunned to see how he was able to call such a powerful explosion with a bow and arrow. The hero asks the guy if he remembers the magical explosion. The guy replies that he remembers only how he remembered it in the report. But this time, they have fixed the advanced version of the explosives on the arrow. Even if you can't put the device in the right place, it can always be shot there. Another advantage is the strong mitol bowls that made a lymphon. They allow you to shoot very powerfully, making a minimum of effort. Taking into account the long range of shots, the enemy will not even be able to approach. They will be expected from everywhere, the danger of strong blows from a long distance. Kyle noted that it sounds like an incredible weapon. The knight confidently stated that with such an advantage they had a real chance to win. Belsi appeals to the master to allow her to take part in the battle. 86. Alfred also asks for permission. Knights plead with the guy to agree. He hesitates and does not know what to answer. Kraft asks the child not to resist and assures that he loves her very much. And they are not the only ones who know about it. In fact, everyone is aware of the guy's illness in the village. Everyone is constantly looking for a way that could help him. But no one talks aloud about it. It is scary to admit that attempts may be in vain. Everyone gathered to support him. Kraft begged Kayla to let them save him. The guy was crying. He confessed that he behaved shamefully and lost his self-control only because he loved everyone very much. He was afraid that his decision could depend on his decision, who would remain alive and who was not. But he, as the head of the village, will also have to become stronger. He gives them his consent. In exchange for this, they have to promise that they will inevitably return alive and intact. They promised. For this moment, all the preparations were already completed. And so the day it was necessary to go to destroy the dragon. When Kraft went outside, a large crowd of people opened before his eyes. He wondered in surprise whether all these desperates were in fact gathered for the task of defeating the dragon. The knight answered him that even the participation in this campaign was bringing a lot of glory. In addition, they are glad to help him and Kyle. Finally, everything became clear for Kraft. He saw the determination in everyone's eyes, and he felt it. He understood everything. The joy of the opportunity to help someone who needs it. Leifin addressed the boy, asking to trust the protection of the village. The guy smiled in response and said he relied on them. Suddenly the guy turned. The mine supported him for the cloak. The young man asked her what had happened. She, in response, said she would wait for him and asked to return whole and unharmed. The young man gently stroked her on his head and assured that all is well, and he would definitely return. The adventurer finally decided to go on the road. And this is how the company moved on the path, full of determination to defeat the dragon. The adventurer carefully watched the dragon through binoculars. He saw him to the depths of his soul. The green dragon was giant size. Even at such a distance, his greatness is felt. Although the knight has already met with him earlier, he now seems truly frightening. He turned to the artisan, asking whether everything was prepared. He answered with consent and said he could start. The guy ordered all adventurers to listen carefully to him. The first stage of their plan began. He says that if something does not work, then let them go immediately. It is not necessary to continue the fight if you feel that the strength is already on the verge. They started their offensive on the dragon. The dragon noticed the adventurers. Reddles shouted that it was time to start. They rushed into an attack with loud exclamations. The knight said they were also on the offensive, and Belsi replied that she had understood him. The guy took advantage of the rapid blow reception, and Belsi used a fast heavenly slot in response. Other adventure seekers attached to the battle with the dragon, rushing on it on all sides. The crowd of adventurers looked at the dragon with candid hostility. The girl noticed that blood appeared on the dragon. The knight seems to push them to move on without stopping or betraying their passion. Suddenly, the dragon lifted his head up, and Kraft, noticing it, warned that the dragon was about to release his flame-breathing. The protagonist took a step forward and stopped right in front of the fire. He sat down on the ground and called on a giant earth shaft. A creature suddenly appeared behind the wall. Perhaps it was this moment that remained in memory, when he first voiced their plan. Feeling the breath of the enemy, the hero is immediately protected by magic. When the dragon is surrounded, the flames, reflecting from the walls, covers it from all sides. The wall began to be covered with cracks. The hero jumped his teeth and whispered that she could not stand for a long time. The knight urged everyone to cook explosives. The warriors aimed at the dragon and at the same time released their arrows. An explosion came, and the dragon exploded with a terrible roar. He was painful. At that moment, Belcha shouted that they all come out. The creature weakened. At night, cries were heard that they had squeezed him from all sides if everyone was pressed on him. They should attack all their arsenal without holding back no strength or determination. The unexpected dragon straightened and roared loudly. The bright light spilled around, illuminating all the adventurers. They still cannot understand what is happening. Suddenly, a bright light flashes on the horns of the dragon. This is probably his next attack. Everyone needs to be prepared immediately. However, nothing happened. The dragon just stood, lifting his head to the sky. Kraft finally realizes that nothing has happened. Then why did this magical circle be needed? Some suggested that it was only an empty threat. Others acknowledged that it looked really scary and expected a new attack. However, the arrow never flew further. It was suddenly stopped by some invisible barrier. One of the magicians also dared to attack, but his spell was simply scattered without reaching the hole. The spell did not work again. Kraft thought and began to carefully analyze everything that happened. He realized that it was a protective magic. The hero shouted loudly that this light probably destroys any magic, even the explosions of magic. And if so, no one knows what else it is capable of. Reddick said they need to retreat. Suddenly the dragon moved. He began to gain air for his breathing. Kraft realized that even a huge land and fortifications would not protect them at such a distance. He shouted continuously, calling them to run as soon as possible. The young man remembered how friends said they were counting on him. He decided that they would not allow them to die. Kraft turned to Reduk and Bap. He ordered them to impress him with his skills. They do not have time to explain at all. I approached, grabbed the guy by my shoulder, and pushed his back sharply. He shouted at unexpected pain. Then he rolled on the ground, and the dragon suddenly began to release fiery breathing from his paves. Kraft landed and began to use a large earthen mines again. A huge wall suddenly grew out of the ground that blocked the path of the dragon fire and stopped its flames. The hero almost broke out, but he still managed to fulfill his plan. However, they cannot overcome it as a futile business. They will not be able to defeat the dragon. Should they retreat? If they try to escape, they suffer losses. But I already see how everything will decide when the hero will come to the stage. She wondered what the weaknesses of the dragon were. If he picks up his horns, he may no longer be able to neutralize magic. The girl asked the boy to try to tilt his head somehow to the ground. The young man was confused and did not understand what they wanted from this knight. She answered that she would try to do it. Belchia Fommelgot. Belchi asked the boy to tilt his head of the dragon to the ground. She was going to cut off his horn. The young man thought the girl was asking him to do something, but the dragon instantly destroyed all his magic. In the meantime, the girl was already on the offensive. The guy was confused. He did not know how to act. Suddenly his gaze fell on an arrow with explosives. He remembered the moment when the dragon was shot. Then the arrow still reached the target, although the explosion did not happen. Magical explosives are a magical attack, so such an attack should have been completely stopped. So physical attacks are still in force. This means they still have a chance, but the guy was still hesitant. At this point, Reddit turned to the hero. He said that if at least the slightest chance appeared, it should be used. Otherwise everything will only get worse. From the very beginning, he was ready to sacrifice himself. For him, this made sense if the dragon could be overcome. The young man looked at his comrades on battle, clenched his fist, and asked for forgiveness. He shouted to his friends that he was just one breath. They had to endure his breath until the end. Comrades agreed. He counts on each of them. In a decisive moment, he collects all his magic together. Considering it can still use magic, so the destruction of dragon magic has its own weak side. This only works within a certain radius. In this case, they have a chance. Radodka warned everyone loudly. The dragon is about to release a fire. Knights will stand until the last. Bardak and Kraft use different skills, fire protection and heat, as well as a powerful earth shield. Together they help each other in the battle against the dragon. The creation exhaled the flames, and it was constantly approaching the heroes. They kept the fire as soon as they could. Even the joint forces of the Radox group barely withstand this powerful attack. The Gap called Kraft and approached him, but Kraft immediately hit him. Then he apologized to his comrades and asked if everything was fine with them. Silhouettes of desperate adventure seekers gradually emerged from the smoke curtain. Kraft called them. They still didn't give up. One of the girls noticed how the dragon was going to breathe again, getting ready to release the flames. The hero only said almost hopelessly that he was too late to change something. A huge stone hung just over the dragon. The guy said it was the chance that everyone else gave him, and he is not going to release her at all. The man raises the stone and throws it directly on the dragon. A huge boulder with a roar struck directly on the dragon. When the magic is powerless, try to create a shepherd from paving stones. And then the creature bowed her head. Kraft exclaimed to Belsi so she would act immediately and threw her potion. She accurately caught a drop and drank it. It is a special potion that allows you to surpass your own human capabilities for a short time. This breakthrough potion, so it will definitely work. The girl flew high into the sky, and in a moment she cut off the dragon's horns. He shouted in pain, and foam began to perform from his mouth. The girl began to fall down. The guy called her by his name, but she only quit him, not worried about her, but focused on the battle with a dragon. Kraft announced that protection no longer works. Now everyone can attack all their strength. The adventurers started off the offensive again. That's the finale. Kraft caused the heavenly thunder, and the reeds drew a giant stone. The dragon understood. Its end came. The battle lasted on. The peasant patiently stood and looked like heroes, hoping for their return. Seeing their crumples, everyone decided that they never managed to win. Kraft reported that they had already returned. Kyle rushed to hug the boy, gladly shouting how happy to see that the hero is alive. The young man was confused by such an unexpected sincerity. Then Leffen rushed into his arms. She told others that he experienced many difficulties. Well, he managed to go home. He was going to report everything, but these two were crying and saying that it did not matter. The main thing is that he is alive, and everything else is not important, and it seems that he has not lost anyone. Indentation and in itself requires courage. They fought worthy and honor. The hero decided that it is better to demonstrate them everything in fact than to explain in words for a long time. He received proof of their victory from the storage. Something heavy fell from the dragon's head. Kraft noted that it was too big a burden, so the hero just hid this trophy in his repository. People were amazed by such strength and peace of the hero. Lefona with horror. The hero realized that everything happened suddenly and unexpectedly for them. He sincerely apologized, because he did not imagine that the story would end that way. When the dragon's head was laid out on the square, Leifan flashed from rage. She does not want to say it aloud, but asks the boy to imagine himself in her place and look at the situation from the outside. Kraft, who was on his knees, apologizes. The young man did not expect everyone to be so surprised. Suddenly, Mina ran up to him and kneeling. The hero tried to politely ask her to depart, because her weight was almost lost sensitivity from her weight. But the guy realized it as if a girl with a sweet look asked if she could not sit on his knees. The hero did not interfere and allowed her to stay where she was. Kyle advised him to focus and tell everything that had happened. Kraft agreed. First of all, he undertook to talk about the battle. Apparently, they managed to defeat the dragon without any loss, although the equipment was seriously damaged. Lifan was surprised. How did they manage to win the dragon, and even without casualties? They also completed the main task and collected enough ragweed flowers. And of course, several other rare herbs. The victory over the dragon was the main purpose, and the harvesting of herbs was only minor. They also found many valuable ores and magical objects. Kyle noted that if these are really such values, many adventurers will definitely want to get them. He decided that it was better to convey further negotiations with Guild Lafon. Lafon assured that she would deal with this question. Perhaps it was Reddit who could tell all the details of the battle. And while the hero continued his story, Mina was comfortable with his knees. In the evening, the characters gathered near the plate. It was here that the victory over the dragon took place. The young man still couldn't understand what really means the name. One of the adventurers said that everyone was involved in decorating the hall. Just in the center of the room lay the head of the dragon. Kraft guessed that people are probably preparing for some dark ritual. Kyle went on stage and asked for silence. He said that thanks to the efforts of each of them, they managed to get rid of one of the horrible creatures who lived on the borders. To this day, this place has been known as the Land of Monsters. Many attempts to master the local spaces have failed. But now that the dragon is overcome, people can live safely in a much wider territory than before. Therefore, he sincerely thanks to the settlers who have performed this feat, as well as adventurers, traders, and all residents of the village of Golden Zoraya. The guy proposes not to delay and celebrate the victory over the dragon right now. He lifted a glass and offered to drink together. All villagers are entertained who knows how. Some are generously pouring and trying to get one of their friends. And suddenly a stranger addresses the hero. It was Ridoka. He addressed his friend, asking if he had already written a letter. He replied that he had not got drunk. The knight became interested in why it happened. The reason for their success this time was no doubt. Kraft says he just did everything he could. Redox adds that he prepared the case, gathered a team and equipment, and all this is due to his careful and thoughtful plan. The whole thing was only one reason. He looked at his hand where a sign was visible. Kraft did not find words to express her gratitude. Reddit agreed, but everyone thinks that he would have invented something without this cross. It is difficult to imagine what it could happen, but say if it were an adventure gathering, everything would hardly succeed without it. The night was just favorable for this. The hero looked at Kyle, who had fun communicating with the inhabitants and enjoying the drink, and with a smile said that all this Kyle really reached on his own. As Reddick said, this time, everything was done through his efforts. Kraft sat on the grass and admired the night sky. Suddenly, he heard someone approaching him. It was a Leofon. The hero confessed that he took a little booze. The girl laughed fun and sat next to him. She looked at the distance and asked the guy whether it is true that now, when the dragon was gone, the village is no longer attacking. The young man looked at the girl in surprise and confirmed her words. He then added that at least they managed to significantly reduce the likelihood that this would happen. The crow was very glad. Finally, everything was over. Subsequently, the girl leaned against the boy and fell asleep. In her dream, she cried and called her mother and dad. The hero remained in place, not wanting to disturb the peace of his friend's sleep. A few days later, Kraft solemnly announced that the elixir was finally ready. There was a small jar in front of Kale and Mina. The guy wondered if it was a cream. The girl nodded and confirmed, yes, it's the cream. He then stated that he had to eat it. He needed to take it inside, swallow. Alfred from Belseo from Surprise heard such words. The hero explained that Kyle's disease is innate, so she arose from the inside. This is evidenced by his cross. Belseo warned the guy about the possible consequences if the experiment fails. Kyle took a spoon with a cream and gently put it in his mouth. Alfred and Bowles immediately attacked him with questions about how he feels, but the hero asked them to calm down. At first, the guy said that now everything remained before, just sweet, nothing special. But suddenly he was covered by a strange feeling. His nights became anxious, and he thought, did things really get worse? The guy has tears in his eyes. No one around could understand what was happening. Kyle said that both pain and joy from success disappeared from his heart so quickly, as if they were not. All this is left in the past. The boy cried for the whole voice. Belso came to him, hugged and began to reassure. She said she believed in all her heart. This day would definitely come. She shone with happiness, and Alfred did not restrain his tears. The hero decided to get out of the room so as not to interfere. Alfred followed him. The man bowed low and thanked the boy for saving Mr. Kyle. He asked what he could thank because simple gratitude and kind words were not enough. The hero was glad that the medicine was eventually acting. The knight agreed. It was really amazing medicine. Although it was necessary to rejoice that the ruler was recovering, there was one desire in the soul, if they had at least one bottle of these medicines. Although, one more. Then Mr. Kyle will be quite healthy. It would be the best development. Kraft assured that there was still an opportunity to cure it. There are still a lot of elixir. The man was stunned. The young man revealed all his treasures before him. All this was made of materials he received after winning the dragon. There were 129 bottles of Sura, a legendary drink, which for a short time enhanced abilities. Another 73 Amrit bottles, only one such capable of making a person a year younger. And yet, as many as 47 bottles of Elixir. Kyle asked if it was wrong. He felt that his tears were in vain. Belcia quarreled the hero, and he replied that he had overdone a little. All these potions are very rare, and if you sell in the city, you can rich well. The great-grandfather noted that they equally avoid trouble, so he suggested that he convey all His Highness, Margraf Baylord. Alfred, Bals, and Kyle did not hide the surprise when they saw what happened. Baylor Margraev, Kyle's father, sat at his desk, considering documents when his eldest son turned to him. The man congratulated Zaida and reported that he had just received a message from Kyle. At first, I thought that Kyle was saying such pathetic words, but apparently, and already on my ears, it was stuck in troubles with this settlement. The young man asked if his brother had crying. Ballarid replied that no. He said Kyle sent something incredible. The young man lifted the parcel that his brother brought, and could not hide his surprise. They were able to overcome the dragon, and now wanted to give a Margrafur a legendary elixir made of collected healing herbs. Soon they will get to the Margrafur's possessions. Kraft lightly clapped Kyle on his shoulder and invited to share his achievements. The guy was inspired by this support and willingly agreed. Kraft said that an incredible panorama unfolded in front of them. It has passed a lot of time since he had last visited Handanara. Kyle recalled that his older brother had already been here before. When the guy called the hero with his older brother, it surprised everyone around. Kyle realized what great mistake he made and sincerely asked for an apology. He promised that he would not tell anyone more. Belska cast a look at the boy, from which it was possible to freeze with fear. The young man hurried to justify himself, assuring everyone that the girl did not understand him. The hero remembers the moment when Kyle suggested that he become his older brother. Belzia yells at the boy, reminding him that he should know his place and give up on this status. They were approaching the city where the Margrave lives. There is a lively movement here and a lot of knowledge is concentrated. Kyle noted that the capital is even more crowded than this city. The gates are always open because there are many travelers every day and therefore no fees for entrance are charged. The hunter says that if he knew about it before, he would come here even then. The guy suggested that he look around once they are here. Earlier, Kraft was thinking about it, but he simply broke inside and sat down near the nobleman, as if it were necessary. Each time, this man amazes me more. Belcia said that the hero should learn to be as cheeky as he is. The characters got out of the crew. The guards asked if they were related to Margrave Baylord. Kraft wondered who they were. The girl explained that they were the guard of the gate. Alfred confirmed their assumption, answering the affirmative. The guards were offered to move the other way because the main street was crowded with people. Alfred thanked them, and at the same moment, Kyle appeared from the carriage, who also expressed his gratitude to the guards. It surprised absolutely everyone. The guards recognized Mr. Kyle and greeted him. They noticed that the gentleman was feeling well. He replied to this that, fortunately, he was already recovering. Men greeted him with that. Obviously, the fresh air in the village was beneficial to him. Alfred explained to them that it would only be a short return. The guards understood everything and promised to keep this information in strict secret. The carriage with the characters slowly moves forward. The hunter was especially liked by these picturesque landscapes. They got Kayla's house. The guy confessed that he was infrequent here. From his childhood, he was sent to live in a rural residence. The hunter concluded that noble people rarely return to their homes. At this point, Lifon shouted at the guy. Kyle asked everyone not to worry about it. Thanks to each of the attendees, he will be able to make a good report for his father, and thanked it sincerely. The hunter noted that the guy is very sweet. Belcia immediately agreed with that. At this point, Kraft thought that Belcia, apparently, could no longer hide his true thoughts. The Lifon suggested going inside. The hero thought that apparently they had to go into the ruler in a carriage. The young man turned to Amina, asking her to get off his knees, but she did not want to comply with his request. Lefin confessed that she began to sympathize with the guy. The young man could not understand why she was so unyielding. The gates opened. The team confidently steps inside, stepping on the unexplored area. The heroes were happy with their new trophies. In the meantime, someone watched them carefully from the window. It was Zaid and Frank. The main characters were inside the mansion and patiently waited for what would happen next. They were in front of Margrave Baylor, the second son of Zayed, and the eldest son of Fratton. The man congratulated the guests. Margarius noted that Kyle sent a rather interesting answer. Did he really come here to explain everything? The young man confirmed this. He sought to meet personally, because he had a lot of important which he wanted to tell. At first, Ballarid asked to talk about the potion. In response, Kyle cunningly returned the conversation and asked him to show him the potions. The hero asked if he was really so easy, but immediately understood his mistake in words. Standing in front of a noble lord, he naturally felt excitement. The hero pulled out 44 bottles of elixir, 129 surah, and 73 dums. Kaylee's family members were amazed by such wealth. He brought incredible things with him, and in such a quantity that it is difficult to imagine. Kyle honestly confessed that it was too much for him, so he decided to pass all these treasures to his father. The man understood that it was not easy to handle it. It has achieved a truly important goal. It would be more proud of yourself. Kyle thanked his father. Margrava advised to give some of his majesty. Otherwise, if you sell everything on the market, the economy will simply decline. Now, about the murder of the dragon. Except for potion that can only be indirect evidence, whether he has any undeniable evidence, Kyle told that they took with them the dragon's head. The man was surprised because he noted that they had no cart with them, all because it is in a special repository for crafts. The guy pointed to the hero, and he scratched the back of his back. The younger son did not believe in what he heard. Zane finally realized everything. Under the dragon he meant a regular lizard. It seems that Kyle has learned to brag as a real aristocrat. Kraft mentioned that usually such big things do not fit into a special storage. Martgriffer suggested trying in the backyard, but Kyle noted that this place would not be enough. One of the sons suggested using an anterior garden that people often pass. If this place is really so large, it will definitely please ordinary residents. As always, it will skillfully bring people to rabies. Alfred and Belzia would have shortened his age for a long time if he had not been the brother of Kyle. Therefore, Kraft appealed to the Margrave to allow him to speak. He said it would still be not enough. All the flower beds will eventually melt. Zide laughed back, and then he assured that there were no problems with this. Baylor allowed them to do it here. The young man sincerely thanked the man. Kraft went out to the front garden, because it was there that it was necessary to release the dragon's head. The Count's family watched everything, looking out of the window. The young man noticed their views and sighed lightly. The guy awakened a special magic. It was like a loudspeaker. The young man turned to everyone around, asking him to pay attention. LeFan was surprised. She heard the boy's voice clearly and legibly as if he were standing around. The hero says that recently the third son of Margrav, Lord Kyle Baylord, performed a real feat. He not only managed to fix himself on the lands of the monsters, thanks to his skillful actions and the spirit of unity he brought with him, they conquered the horrific monster by joint forces. But realizing that some words were not enough, he suggested that they be sure to see everything in their own eyes, and everyone had to pay tribute to Kale, a young, full of hope, who in the next moment pulled the dragon's head. The head was so huge that it was barely in the front yard. All present stood stunned, not believing their own eyes. People began to admire Mr. Kyle. This is the worst monster he has ever seen. Mr. Kyle is really incredible. The man was glad that such a master stands on their side. He realized that all around were concerned. He looked at the friends and his family. Zaida spread his mouth out of surprise, and Belsi with the elevator looked as if they were witnessing as he exaggerated something. The guy realized that he had done business again and spoiled everything. People tried to approach as close as possible to consider the dragon's head. The guards tried to lining everyone in the queue and ordered loudly, "It is possible to look, but it is impossible to stop. You need to move on." Bogretsky spent the hero where he needed. Kraft heard the guards complain with each other. It is difficult for them to cope with this situation. If they were just warned in advance, it would be easier, and so more work. One of them sincerely apologized for the inconvenience. During lunch, the hero joined the Margrave family. One of the sons unexpectedly expressed the idea of taking a fee from tourists who want to look at the head of a dragon, exhibited as a local monument. Baylor replied that without proper preparation, it would turn into a real powder composition. In addition, it is not necessary to disclose this success too wide. The man decided that it was better to leave all the consequences on the Famalga. Kraft immediately realized what the official procedure was discussed. Belsia looked to the side at this point, clearly showing her dissatisfaction. The father praised Kyle for good care of the dragon. The man also thanked everyone who helped Kyle. According to the latest report, 1,000 people have already lived in the settlement. The guy noted that housing is not enough catastrophically. They could no longer accept new people. The man confessed that he exceeded all his expectations, and suddenly shouts came in the air. The door to the dining room suddenly dissolved. Everyone who was in the room immediately turned their gaze there. 2 girls entered the room. They were shyly apologized for taking care. Mararav turned to the leads and the relays and said they had to talk seriously. She smiled cunningly and laughed, they say. She had long guessed it. Although the woman may not have to interfere with this conversation, she really wanted to share her thoughts. So Kyle called Kraft. He told the man that this woman was once his second beloved, and now became his first wife, Led, and his daughter of the relay stood next to her. It is the relay, the mother of Zaid. The woman immediately assured that there was nothing wrong with it. The man agreed with her. She said enthusiastically that Kyle's achievements were really striking. The guy blushed and raised his eyes without waiting for such words. The guy thanked the woman. Kraft could not understand why he looks happier now than when he was praised by his own father. But the new generation was growing so rapidly that it could have been a burden for Kyle. Although there is a proportion of truth, the woman did not dare to say it aloud. Fortunately, the new settlement is located quite near the possessions of Zed. He has already proven his ability to control. She proposed to transfer Zaida settlements. Everyone was surprised by these words, although on the map of its possession and look adjacent, there is a huge territory between them. It's so strange that it does not fit into common sense. She continued that thanks to the medicine, Kyle was able to overcome the disease and got rid of her innate weakness. So, wouldn't it be better if Kyle now helped her here in Gondar? Her arguments sound quite convincingly. But in fact, she just uses her position to help her son. Is it not visible to the naked eye? Zord only confirmed everything that his mother said. Kraft realized that they intended to take advantage of Kyle. Feed explained that he recommended him for settlement, but now Kyle recovered, and there was nothing to worry about. Now he can trust everything else to his brother. The young man laughed, and Froughton decided to make his proposal. In addition to the mother's advice, why not entrust the management of the settlement and create a new one for Kyle? The Margrave ordered the butterfly to bring a map. He quickly unfolded her on the table. Lifon was surprised to see such a detailed card. Kraft thought, is it not a secret aristocrat's weapon? You can probably show them. At this time, Froughton started looking for a better position for Kyle. He showed a place not far from where the dragon was. This territory lies near the Tibetan Empire, and the Federation of Xevious is located on this side of the mountain raster. In addition, there are several small states near these 3 countries. This is a really perfect place for development. Kyle seems to have a real skill to create settlements. Why not give him a chance and not send him there, she said, returning to Froughton. She wondered whether he believed that her son was not able to cope with this task. In response, he said that even for Zaida, along with the search for a new place for settlement, it would be too difficult. Kyle will only go there to establish a new settlement as last time. The realist noted that her brother's offer was wonderful. If they both start at the same time, is it not true proof of which one is best? Silence reigned in the room. The Margrave was sitting, concentrated and serious. Vila expressed the opinion that this could be a chance for Kyle to prove his success is not just an accident. Krafta, it was very angry. He was unfortunate that someone doubted Kylie, but the guy still agreed to this proposal. Alfred, Belchea, and Lifan were silent for surprise, and he only laughed fun and said that his brother became a real wise man. However, Kyle has 2 conditions. At first, he insisted on leaving the name Golden Dawn. His brother just smiled, and his father asked about the second condition. After all, starting with the craft, he went through a lot with the inhabitants of this village. So Kyle decided to take with him everyone who wanted to go with him. Usually, peasants are forbidden to leave the place where they live. However, their settlement was an exception to this rule. Vila stated that they would not allow them to take away any resources or property from the village. It was very angry with Kyle. He stated that it was too much. They will not be able to go to a new area without the necessary resources. The woman answered that she would not allow any option. The guy understood everything, and in response asked to allow the guilds and individuals to take their things with themselves. Baylord asked if everything was really as necessary, and Kyle confidently confirmed that everything was fine. Zaid said that everything was already resolved. Kyle finally began to behave like a real aristocrat. Kraft quietly asked Kyle why he agreed. In response, Kyle only winked. At this point, the meeting ended. However, the Margrave called Kraft and said he wanted to talk to him alone, asking to enter this room a little later. The young man was clearly surprised. After a while, Kraft came to the meeting place. Excited, he looked around. Bailarid nodded to him, inviting to sit down. The guy was sitting at the table, holding a cup of tea, and felt tension under the watchful look of the Margrave. His fear was so great that he barely coped with tension. In his thoughts, he pleaded with a Margrave at least something. And suddenly, without restraining, he fired the phrase that he was the alchemist of Twilight. The man heard that the young man was well known on medicine, but now it became clear. He really has a great skill. The young guy thanked him. Then Baylor wondered if he had heard about Jarval. Urail is the best alchemist in the country. She turned the fertilizer world and became a well-known doctor. The hero tells that Urail is known for his art alchemy, and he also read many of her books. In his imagination he drew her image. Markgrafr said that the jacket was serving, and it seems that she wanted to talk to him. The hero could not understand why he was chosen. Baylor was able to show exactly where her estate was. On this, Kraft decided to complete the conversation. He felt a lot of nervous, and suddenly the Margrave asked the boy to take care of Kyle. The young man turned in surprise, but still agreed. Subsequently, the crew drove to the estates of the Glow. They put a gloomy house full of shadows and unknown. Suddenly, the statue that stood nearby came to life and indicated the boy's way. Kraft could not believe his eyes. There was a monster created by a man. This requires skill in higher alchemy. Jarval is really capable of everything. The statue reported to the lady that she had brought Mr. Kraft. She then noted that he was late and ordered her to bring him here. The guy greeted, and then amazed Jarval. She turned and confidently stated that she was the only and unique. Her name is Jarval. The young man was quite surprised when he saw that a little girl was standing in front of him. The little girl called her name, Jarval. She wondered if the guy in front of her was really Kraft. The guy confirmed this in response. His name is Kraft Vulcan. He heard about her through her information. He became closely acquainted with her work. Now it's incredibly glad that it can finally meet her personally. The guy grabbed her hands. Realizing his act, the young man apologized, explaining that he was just too happy. Jarval noted that he was clear. In spite of your age, suddenly the guy noticed something unusual. In front of him was a thing made by a master of a Jarval, a device that purifies water in the river. This invention was called Ranbik. Until this moment, Kraft has never seen him with his own eyes. The girl noticed that the guy studied everything well. He was able to notice important details. The guy thanked the girl, because knowledge of her books became a real find for him in the manufacture of medicines. If she took him to her students, he would be the happiest person in the world. The girl thought a little, and then said quietly the boy's name. He shuddered when he heard his name from her mouth. Jarval promised to make him his student, but only as a special affection. But there is one condition. She heard from his clairvoyance that he created the miraculous medicines that cured Mr. Kyle. To make sure that he is worthy of becoming her student, she had to learn how to cook it. Kraft assured that he always carried a recipe with him, and he held out to the girl. She was surprised by such a gesture. She was surprised when she found out that he just wore it in his pocket. She stated that she would now take reading. She studied the recipe carefully, and then announced that they would now take it to their students. Crafton sincerely thanked the mentor. Although he would dream of living near her and studying together, he still has to live in the settlement. Jarval mentioned that he was still related to the contract with the guild. She also worked on Mr. Zaid under certain conditions, and now lived in his territory. Then the guy wondered whether it means that she would have to move. Kraft explained everything in detail to the girl. She grabbed her head and immediately said that Mr. I would need to go to the Zoria Gold. That's what she was enough. The heroine realized that it is also difficult for the teacher now. He has a contract with Guild, not with Mr. Kyle. Therefore, most likely, he could not do anything, but still sought to follow him. Jarval proposed to discuss this issue with Guild. If the negotiations still go out, she promised to order a good word for him. The guy felt a real inspiration. He was surprised how sincerely the girl took care of her student, and it was at this moment that Jarval wondered how much helped her in her research. But it all seemed like a trifle compared to what he saw now. She looked at the boy's recipe once again, and wondered if he had already published him somewhere. When asked, the guy only looked at her in surprise, and then he asked what it means. She was surprised that he had never heard about the academy. He told everything he knew, and spread this knowledge around the world. She also participated in the creation of such a system. He does not know how to properly design and present his work. The young man confirmed it, and she suggested writing about him, but then she would have to point herself as a co-author. Even if it becomes angry, the idea that it will be mentioned by the co-author in his work, she did it all for the good of humanity. Kraft approached her and asked if she was ready to become his co-author. He was convinced that he really deserved such honor. Jarval replied that he did not mind. The young man began to thank her sincerely and asked to agree persistently. The alchemist wondered if he really could not suspect others. He became more and more difficult from this thought. The next day, the Lifis wakes up a guy. He rose and apologized to her. It turned out that he did not sleep all night, because he became fascinated with the book that the teacher gave him. Suddenly the girl froze in surprise and blushed. She asked why he was without clothes. One way or another, you should not panic. Fortunately, it was only the upper part of her body. But where to put this linen? He was definitely not going to sleep in clothes on such a wonderful bed. The guy asked her to turn away so that he could dress. LaFan just threw her over her shoulder so that he was in a hurry. Mina was sitting on a chair next to his clothes, which was carefully folded. The guy asked her to move, but she did not even shift. Then he carefully lifted her and said that it was not necessary to sit on his clothes. Dressing, the young man asked LaFan what she came, but she did not answer. She just grabbed him by the cloak and pulled somewhere. Suddenly, a stranger appeared in front of them and asked if they were going to the guild. It was Bals. She said she would go with them. The hero thought that she was just bored. The girl was indignant with such a thought. Then the young man wondered who would protect Kale. Balsi just shrugged. They say who dare to attack the estate of His Highness. Lifan noted that the girl clearly defended him, although he was not yet aware of how important it was. But the hero did not understand anything. He was the same person who prepared 43 bottles of legendary potion. In this case, the three of them could have a great time on a date, with flowers, walks by the hand, and all this romance. But Belcha denied loudly, they say. This is not a date, and he did not consider himself a joker. When the young man came to the city, he immediately noticed there were almost no semi-human. Semi-people call intelligent creatures that are not people. The same night, he was asked what he knew about half-life. He replied that he grew up in a shelter where children who were only half people lived near him. The lampan is also in fact a semi-crop. Belcia constantly forgets about it, because Lahone looks like a common one. However, some treat those with prejudice, and most of the barracks do not enjoy the neighborhood with those who have fur. She believes that the main problem is the clash of new and old ideas. The elevator said she knew many half-people. The young man noted that the girl seems like a person who easily finds common ground with everyone. For them, she is like a mascot. The girl was surprised to hear the guy called her. The hero felt something wrong and showed her a skewers with the meat lying side by side. He said he would treat them today. Lifan noted that she seems as if he specifically distracted her from the urgent issue. The character supported her opinion and then went to buy a meat skewer. He gave Belsi 1 barbecue and left 2. She asked why only 2. He held one in his hands and replied that she needed to eat more, unlike Belchea. The girl burst into tears and reproactedly stated that it did not have a drop of tact. Like this morning, the girl reminded him again that she was already grown up. The guy even joked that she could take her second barbecue if she suddenly does not eat him. She said she would eat because the real non-agriculture. Belshi jokingly told the boy that he was not shining popular. Finally, they reached the Gangar Adventurist Guild. Leafand and Kraft were surprised when they saw the head of the guild. He immediately called them in their name. He noted that he was pleased to see them healthy. Lahone replied that they had not been seen for a long time. The hero wondered why he was here. Lafon explained that all this became possible thanks to one boy. He was increased and appointed by the new head of the guild of this city, as well as the head of the regional staff of adventurers. The young guy did not understand what it means, but sincerely congratulated his boss on the rise. As noted in the report, all medicines were handed over to the authorities. The hero confirmed this decision, considering him the best. The man agreed. If he used them of his own benefit, it could lead to serious problems. He even overcome the dragon, a real feat. The man put 2 bags with coins in front of them and said it was a special reward for both of them. The guy was surprised to such a large amount and asked if they could pay so much. In response, he heard that he was in fact more worried about such a large amount, but because he was at risk of complaining about the petty payment after everything he did for them. After all, for such a prominent alchemist, it was very little. If he needs something, it is enough to say. He will do his best to help. Kraft said he had only one request in that case. Although this may seem unfair, he would like to change his contract. His contract ties him to the border village. Because of this, he will not be able to go to a new home. and he would like to go with Kyle. Kraft states that he wants to go with Kyle. He was aware that it was not quite reasonable, but he still wanted it. Leader Gil allowed him to stay with Kyle. The guy was confused. Why did he generally decide that he would be the only one to stay? The young man begins to explain that under the terms of his contract with the guild, he is obliged to stay only in the territory defined for him. After that, the guy appeals to Lafon to explain it in more detail. According to the contract, it is forced to stay in the settlement for a long time, as it ties it to the name of this place. That is, even if he did not want to, he should still follow the instructions of Mr. Kyle, both for himself and for the village of Golden Zoraya. Lafon assured that Mr. Kyle would never leave him. The guy remembered what he said a minute ago and blushed. This is what he wanted to talk about. The man noted that the young man was still young. Kraft asked him to shut up. Guildmaster assured the guy that he should not worry. No one intends to divorce him with Mr. Kyle, so his last worries finally dispelled. After visiting the guild, the heroes decided to visit the children's shelter. The young man remembered that he once grew up in the same place. In spite of all these years, the church still influenced him, so he was fought there for at least curiosity. Suddenly, he noticed how the children began to speak bad words about half-life, and later decided to rake stones in them. The people tried to protect each other, and the master managed to create a rainbow shield in time. The stones from the emerging wall were scattered in different directions, and they began to beat those who rushed at them. The children quickly realized there is a magic barrier in front of them, and there was nothing fun about it. Suddenly they noticed Kraft, who looked at them with a sinister look. His facial expression showed that children no longer feel any fear. The children ran away, and the young man could not understand what it was in life. Wherever he came, such cases have occurred everywhere. He approached the half-life and asked how they had things mentally, noting that he was not in vain here by accident. However, the children were more fond of a radiant wall. They exclaimed enthusiastically that it was incredibly cool. The guy was red with embarrassment. The children asked if this man was a magician. The hero was very surprised that he was called old, because in fact he just turned 20. Suddenly the girl appeared and asked the boys that it was such a noise. She looked at the boy and recognized Kraft in him, and the guy immediately realized that he was Azul before him. Belsi wondered if they were familiar. He replied that they grew up together. The guy asked her what she was doing here. She replied that his face became a little more angry, but she did not change at all. The girl did not understand what he was talking seriously. Kraft noted that she was misunderstood. The guy immediately realized her clothes that she became a priest student. The hero did not hide astonishment. Lifon noted that for semi-human, this is an extremely difficult task. Azul asked who came with you. Lifon introduced herself by explaining who she was. Belsia was a security guard. Altogether, they came to do sacrifice. Azul was glad and invited them to follow her. She wanted to treat the guests with tea, but the characters politely refused. The shelter was in a miserable state. It's more like a ruin than a refuge. Azul apologized for this appearance. The whole building was too old. The place is so neglected that even all Kraft money would not be enough to restore it. In the meantime, children asked Kraft again to show them their magic tricks. Lafona leaned to the children and wondered how old they were. In response, they joked that she is almost their age and should not look like an older, and they teased it for low growth. The girl was angry and shouting, stated that she may look at their age, but in fact she is much older than them. The children were scared and began to run away. Belchea remained confused, not understanding what happened. Then one of the girls came to the knight, saw a real sword and called Belsi cute. From these words, Belsa blushed. Kraft noticed that the girl had already reached the age when you begin to pay attention to such things. And the knight strictly exclaimed the children so that they did not interfere in the affairs of adults. Azul brought food and noted that the young man was fine with his children. The girl told how they raised her for his hard work. She gave all her strength to help the parish rector. Kraft mentioned that as a child she was a real brawler. At first he intended to go immediately after the donation, but now he wanted to help something. So Lifon suggested his help in repairing the local building. Azul refused and stated that the shelter would be closed soon. The characters were genuinely surprised by such news. That's the matter. This story is quite typical. Although the church always wants to help, keeping shelters is expensive and the benefits of it. If enough money is not possible, such establishments simply close. The girls said that new homes were found for children. However, all of them will eventually go different ways. The children began to insist that they were not going to go anywhere. They want to stay with the zoo. The girl turned to them and asked not to be selfish. But it is difficult for them to part with everyone. They like to be near the Azu, they cried. They cannot understand why they are not allowed to stay with Zul. She trembles nervously and apologizes to them. She also dreams of staying with everyone, but she cannot protect them all. As a semi-human and a priest student, the best she can do is help them find a new home. She barely held her tears, but still apologized to the children. Kraft wondered for a moment, and then asked the children to ask if they were ready to go to the distant lands and make efforts for the new home to stay with the gas. They assured that they would follow her anywhere and do everything in their power. This is the answer that the guy was waiting. Lifan asked if the guy really had a plan. He nodded and assured that he would not allow them to divorce. He promised that he would definitely protect them. Dave's departure to the village of Golden Glow, the estate where Kale and Kraft stood, the children who walked near the zoo ran. The girl apologized for the delay, explaining that the meeting of things had taken a long time. One of the children admits that he did not expect such developments. He turns to the girl and asks her to stay more confidently and proudly. After all, it is the main priestess of the new settlement and a prominent shelter mentor. The boy asked the hero how he managed to achieve this. He replied that Kyle first invited the church and orphans to settle. Since there were no churches in that place, the proposal was immediately accepted. Then Kyle wrote a letter of recommendation for Azul. It was because of this letter that the church decided to support Azul and advance it. Then the cardinal intervened in the conversation and noted that the achievement of Asal was also the result of her hard work. Although the church has already cancelled the prejudice against half-life, deeply rooted in society, discrimination was still standing on its way and did not allow him to move career. So for them, this event became happy. They are glad to finally openly recognize the dedication of Azulis. Cardinal wished her happiness and good luck in a new place. Kraft and children watched closely at what was happening. Suddenly, the hunter approached the hero and, looking intently, asked who was this cute priest. The young man told him everything. He was surprised to learn that she agreed to go with them to a new settlement. The girl looked at the boy, and he immediately blushed and smiled back. Without delaying, he quickly ran to her, introduced himself as Drato, and reported that he was appointed as a guard. He seems to have time to fall in love with her. Kyle apologized for the delay and explained that he said goodbye to his father. The guy realized that he would not return to Gandar for a long time. Meanwhile, Baylord watched everything from the window. Kraft remembers the very moment when his father Altrosby asked the hero to protect Kyle. In his memoirs, he hears the hero reassures him, "Don't worry, I will take care of Kyle." Meanwhile, a semi-human girl advises a friend to do nothing that could put Azu in an uncomfortable position. Kyle realized who he was dealing with. Azu sincerely thanked the boy for his amazing kindness. The children began to say that although they had little experience, they are glad to get acquainted with him. They politely asked to take care of them. Kyle noted what these children were polite, and Kraft realized that he had already got on their fishing rod. Azul worries how a long journey can affect children, but Geratis, Alfred, and Belcia reassure him. There is nothing to worry about, because the journey will not last long, and they still have a potion to restore strength. The cart rolls at high speed. The Alfred applies a bust. Gerato uses infinity, right in place. Everyone see that the attack does not stop. If everything goes so well, it will end without complications. No one will hurt. Azu notes that this energy and such speed are absolutely abnormal. She cannot find this logical explanation. Lifan looks at the girl and realizes that she has long forgotten how unusual it is. Be that as it may, they got to their destination in just a few days. Zaid came to the Zoraya Golden Settlement. He didn't understand what a place means. Why is there no living soul here? The head of the guild says he was waiting for the master. Now he demands explanation. Where did the 1,000th settlement disappear? He promised to pay for those who remain, 5 gold coins every month. Didn't it say it? But the leader replied that it was Mr. Yakio announced it openly and left this announcement. Yet, when Mr. Kyle left, no one left. I first thought that this is a joke. Well, who would like to voluntarily move after Kyle to such a dangerous land? 2 weeks before the arrival of Zaid Kyle, he declared all the inhabitants that the village would now belong to, and Mr. Kyle himself leaves these lands and moves to new lands. People were genuinely outraged by such news. However, the guy asked them to calm down. He suggested that everyone think about the future. If someone wants to follow him and settle on new lands, let him decide himself. But the guy did not even have time to arrange, as everyone around raised his hands and stated, of course they would go with him. No one wanted to stay here. Kraft asked them if they were sure of their choice. If left, Mr. Zaid will pay them full salary. But the peasant exclaimed that they would be able to make his village even better than it, and even amazing a sacrum sitting on his high horse. Hearing this, Kyle asks everyone to get ready for moving. Kraft thought that many would want to stay. He noted that Kyle was really able to unite people, but praised him mentally. The guy, however, did not even know why the hero was looking at him with that look. Apparently, this is all because of the popularity of Kraft. The characters stop near the boxes, and Kraft briefly tells what they take with them. Unfortunately, they will have to leave almost half of the endurance potion. They are not allowed to pick up the villages. Well, though, Killer's store bought the rest of the stocks. However, Kyle has already collected all the necessary materials for blacksmithing and alchemy in Gandar. If you have the necessary resources, they will always be able to make it. According to the terms of the contract with the guild, he needs to stay here. When the situation is getting better, they will be able to open a new branch of the guild and pass the guild's leadership there. They left the village behind and went on a trip. Their route ran to the area where members of the district lived. It was a dangerous territory, almost unknown to people. Usually, the trip would take several months. Thanks to herbs, they became invincible. Radoka reported that with annoying enemies, it was already over. Another man, having a little power, took the opportunity and paved the road for the future. They moved quickly without meeting any obstacles, and so they appeared as if from the air, so fast that everyone did not have time to blink. Kyle thanked Fawn and Alfred for grateful for waiting. The girl reported that the monsters were already destroyed. Together, they discussed where to place the houses. Kyle praised them for his wonderful work and said that it was now possible to start building temporary housing. The residents of the settlement have taken up their work together. Everyone joined the construction, investing their strength and skills. While traveling, Kraft noted that they behaved too strange. They overcame a long distance and have already taken hard work. There is such a theory. To build muscles, you need to strain them, then rest, and so in a circle. Thanks to special potions, they could move all day and did not get tired at all. After such exhausting work without rest, their muscles became simply incredible. The edit of the Cyclops wins. Lefon realizes that all merit is in the legendary potion. She proposes to stop giving it to all in a row. Kraft was already discussing this with Kyle. He explained that if the consequences are too serious, the army would want to recruit them. Therefore, it is better to make potions for ordinary people weaker. He was glad that they have many strong hands, but asked the Alephophone to explain everything in detail to others. The girl agreed and asked about the potion that was sold to Adventure. Such potions could be very effective, but he told her to sell them in the usual order. The strength of the muscles did not interfere with them. Only a few days passed, and the merchant with Kindo could no longer hide his surprise. Construction was surprisingly quickly. Kraft thanked everyone for a visit, and the cinema again managed to make a successful agreement. For the first time after a long break. As they asked, he brought the volcanic ash and lime. I wondered in surprise why they need it. However, while they pay, he is happy to trade with them. Kraft noted that their goal will be quite unusual. Often, because of frequent rains, this becomes a problem, so this thing is quite inexpensive. Therefore, it is not difficult to deliver it in large volumes. Ashes and limestone must be used to create this special building unit. If you mix limestone, alchemical reagents, fine gravel, and water with volcanic ash, this mixture quickly hardens and turns into a stone block. If you set it a shape before pouring, it will become a strong building unit. Kindo wondered how strong it would eventually become. Then Kraft suggested that he look himself. This instance was created for testing. On this side, the dent is noticeable. The block was not blown by the sword, and it was terribly angry. He began to beat him with all his strength. But on the other hand, if this creature has withstood the attack of Redok and still stands on his feet, it indicates incredible force. The question is, what can they be able to build from such powerful blocks? Kraft replied that they were going to build the most powerful fortress in the world. Aquino seemed not surprised. It seems that he had already seen similar and used to such words. According to the original plan, Kyle had to take 20 years. However, when the hero flipped the books of Teacher Jarva, his cross revealed a new ability. He began to study alchemically strengthened stone. If they can create boulders on their own, you will not have to carry anything anymore. Construction will become cheaper and faster. Now it is clear why they need so much ash for these stones. It is not difficult for them. The best agreement cannot be imagined. Does Kraft agree and continue to cooperate with them? He confirmed that he trusts them in the supply of high-quality goods. However, he asked to keep it secret until the very end. It would not be good if others learned about it. Then the prices will jump immediately. Aquino assured that he could rely on him. Kraft himself asked this request. The main thing for them is safety. They promised to deliver everything as soon as possible. The merchants left a seat. One of them noted that this work was really interesting. He thinks of completely different scale. But for them, this agreement is a solid profit. There is something to note. This is a real holiday. However, the boss refused to celebrate and stated that it would only be when they would complete another case. Guild leader turned to Mr. Zide. He said that the settlement of Mr. Kyle was going here. The man smiled noticeably. Aquino rejoiced in acquaintance with Mr. Zide. The new moon immediately noticed many floods. It said that he faced a serious merchant. He asked how to leave the village of Kale now. Probably for them it was a sad farewell. The merchants were stunned. Does he really think they would return after a failed trip? Aquino confesses that if he was an opportunity, he would be happy to settle here. However, the area has not yet been inhabited. Nothing has begun here. Zide explained that the new migrants had not yet reached this place. Meanwhile, the guy suggested buying goods from the merchant. In the shed there are 4 barrels of middle and 9 barrels with endurance potions. All these things are unusual because they were made by an alchemist named Kraft. Aquino was inspired by this idea. Zide decided that he would sell the gifts that Kyle left so generously at a high price and would double the initial capital of settlers. The merchant understands that it is in vain to persuade him to sell the product at a low price. But now he thinks, will this amount be enough? The eyes are in surprise to expand. Kindo is able to pay everything and right away. Does he always carry such large sums of money with him? The merchant replied that he had heard about the big deposits of mitrol in these places. That is why he wants to buy all his stocks. This amount was nothing compared to the funds received at the beginning. Zide agreed to such an agreement without hesitation. The merchant thanked the boy and then asked him with a bold request. He says it may seem a little careless after he helped him. Will he allow him to establish a small visiting tavern? If he gives the hotel his company's special privileges here, they will agree to pay 10% more taxes. The profit from the tavern will be small, but if he wants to try, let it be. In any case, taxes will have to be paid, so it is only a profitable business for him. The man decides to use everything that is possible from this situation. He states that 10% is very little for monopoly. In response, he only agrees by 20%. The merchant accepts its terms. So between them an exclusive agreement is concluded. Zab did not expect that he could make so decently on Kyle's things. But this is all due to his skill. He managed to sell more and more than he planned. Now he will gladly show Kyle. The assistant asked if it was really the right decision. If you look at Zyda, it looks like everything is only in his favor. Aquino explained that, selling elixirs and without using them, he did not even know what mystery the wind hid in them. Jarval stepped into the city and looked carefully at all. She did not understand why only hotels were here. Zita said she was late and everything was guilty of her absence. Whatever he tried, only hotels are erected here. In addition, the town has only a bar, a shop, and a cart repair workshop. Neither adventure or migrants are delayed here for a long time. Everyone passes by. He immediately understands what is happening here. Under such conditions, it is impossible to develop the village. The girl replies that she has just arrived and knows it without unnecessary explanations. The merchant of the merchant says that even after paying all taxes, they managed to make considerable profits. He himself does not understand how it turned out. Aquino approaches and asks to pay attention to one document. These are papers about buying a potion from Mr. He sold him a potion at a price that was less than 1/10 of their market value. It seems that he did not even know how valuable these potions were. The profit from such an agreement came a huge. These potions cost a whole fortune because the artisans sold them in very limited quantities. However, this is not all that Mr. Zaidi did not take into account. Travelers and displaced persons who run past these places head to the new village of Golden Zaraya, hearing about Mr. Cayley. They didn't even think to stay here forever. However, it would take a few days to get to a new settlement through wild terrain. But if there would be a village on the way, it would be an ideal place for a traveling yard. The assistant finally realized why he concluded this exclusive agreement on the case. As Kindo suspected, people continued to go through this way. Local hotels flourished. Zeta asked Jarvala to find out what was happening here, and why no one wants to live in this place. And the girl suddenly asked if he had to be an alchemist. For the merchant, his nose is the key to success. He must be able to hear the smell of light prey sensitively. Now they can lift glasses for this. The evening promises to be festive. Everyone is celebrating. But Zed exclaims that everything should be completely different. Events take place in a small town. Several girls, echoing and leaning closely against each other, look in a certain direction. One of them asks whether the main character is really confident in his choice. They are delighted to look at the beautiful church that he built for them. The girls look carefully and surprise its size. The young man explains that they will soon build a big city, so the church should be appropriate. Ask her, is she really worthy of such? The protagonist advises her just to do everything that is in her power. The little boy also announces to help them. The young man looks at him and cannot hide his surprise. The boy asks if a young man can teach them to use magic. The main character hesitates with the answer, because he does not know what to say. Remembering the promise he has given to the boys before, he agrees. The protagonist reports that once a week will teach them the basics. The characters take the craft and wonder that he does not deny. The young man replies that he was going to teach them so much. He smiles and turns to his new students. Listen carefully and remember every word. The girl looks at him with delight and realizes that he really became a reliable person. Then one of the guys says that it can be called Azula. Construction of the Zhao Zoraya Castle City is at a rapid pace. Over time, it should grow 3 times more than the capital. From all corners people come here, hearing rumors. Everyone brings their own abilities, and together they work one team. The main character's girl asks him how things go. The guy with a smile replies that everything is fine. They stand on a high wall. The protagonist looks fascinated around and says that the landscape is incredible. Their progress is really fast. People have already learned to manage water supply. The protagonist is wondering that it is a tall building in front of him. The girl replies that it is a home for displaced persons, erected from modern building blocks. The hero is surprised, because it was she who controlled the whole process of construction. Considering how many people already live there, it was clearly difficult. The girl agrees and asks if he heard about special privileges for those who seek to obtain permanent citizenship. Such people are given the right to choose support or housing. After learning about it, many masters came here. She sincerely thanked everyone who was not too lazy to come to such distant terrain. The hero appeals to the masters to share his experience. The masters first ask if they will be given housing. The hero replies that they have already prepared homes. Moreover, he adds that for those who manifest themselves well in work, there is a luxurious high-class home in the city. The girl returns to Mr. Kyle and says he has to tell the master. He is surprised to know that if he handles his work excellent, he will receive the highest class home. Everyone immediately rushes to do what is the best. Someone takes the plumbing to spend clean water into all homes. The other plans to repair roofs, build construction scaffolding, and repair everything at an altitude. The girl rejoices that everyone has such a morale, and Mr. Kyle is so skillfully inspiring workers. This is visible to the naked eye. The hero sincerely wishes everyone. The heroine says that usually artisans cannot afford to live in luxury homes, so everyone is very pleased when they manage to get a good home. The young man smiles in response. He is pleased to hear it. But at the same time he notes, Kyle seems to be well versed in such issues. Every day Kyle is better able to win people's commitment, and his future looks truly impressive. Suddenly one of the heroes is loudly announced that the effect of endurance has changed. The girl confirms his words. Now she can no longer sell anything stronger to ordinary people. However, since these items are created manually, they do not deteriorate. Their action lasts all day. The protagonist notes that even this is a profitable offer. The man replies that in this case he buys everything for the specified amount of gold. The protagonist turns to Solora, greeting her. You can see that she is all well, she exclaims joyfully. She is overwhelmed by emotions. The hero is wondered if Solora really bought this place. Apparently it cost a lot of money. The girl confirms, yes, she bought, and adds that everything was succeeded thanks to Mr. Kalu, who allowed to pay parts without interest. In addition, she has received many large orders, so things go great. All this was made possible by the main character and artisan guild, which helped with the wholesale sale of potions. The girl looked at the main character with gratitude and sincerely said, Thank you very much. The young man smiles and says he was glad to help. If there are any difficulties, the girls should not be ashamed. You should turn to him. At this point, another person approaches them and welcomes the company. These are Redux. He notes that he had time and adds that he would like to talk to the young man about something important. The young man welcomes his friend to an adventurer rank B. He says it is deservedly deserved. The protagonist states that he was a key figure in victory over a dragon, and is convinced that he can overcome the Cyclops on his own. The partner in response points out that the luck smiled due to his potions and agreed. Then the main character is interested. What about the reward? The warrior turns away, and the sword is visible on his back. He asks with a smile, "Is that what you hint at?" The young man was delighted that he could not come up with a better reward. He has never had a ball that would come so perfectly for him. He can now defeat the Cyclops with one blow. This became possible because the dragon's tooth was added to the hardened mittel. The hero rejoices that his friend appreciated the sword. The girl who killed this weapon believes in his strength. Reddick enthusiastically states that he wants to wave the sword and destroy the Cyclops daily. The protagonist thinks, let him get out of how he pleases, but sooner or later he will regret it. If you are fun with this thing too often, the consequences will be inevitable. The guy suddenly breaks into the main character's room and enthusiastically asks if he is going to hunt today. The guy repeats the question because he does not understand why he hesitates. In fact, a young man is not mine to go, but he has important things that need attention. The interlocutor with a passion reports that in the forest noticed a large flock of wild boars. He explains that when the work is completed, he will not be able to pick up all at the same time, so he thought to turn to the main character for help. The young man immediately guesses that his comrades only need his spatial storage. He gets up and says that a small warm-up will not hurt him. But suddenly the main character stops, and again asks what a flock of wild boars is about. He cannot understand why his friend just doesn't take them with him. Once again, who is about to talk about? Finally, everyone seems to have come together. The man reported that these people were immigrants, and asked if he could help them in hunting and carry them through the forest. The protagonist said, "Welcome, that I was glad." All participants were excited, because they had a great opportunity to work with him in one team today. Hunters are wondering, what do children do here? Why are they in their team? The young man replies that they came from the church. He is interested in seeing how their magic classes are moving. He pauses and adds that he is looking forward to working with experienced hunters. However, there is a doubt whether they should bring them with you. The kid, however, supports this idea, and the hunter leader thinks about how best to do. The protagonist asks the man what he found in that place. He replies that he saw traces similar to orcs. Hunters were instantly horrified and began to ask what it could mean. The hero replies that there are many and shows this group. But the hunter stops him, asking, "Is not it dangerous? It is very risky here. We need to return." However, the protagonist returns to the children and says they will now look for orcs together. Adults are indignant. They cannot understand how you can say such things to children, and remind you that have come here for the sake of wild boars. The hero stops them with a calm gesture and says that everything is well. You do not need to worry. He assures that he did not forget about the boars, but thought that now you can do the orcs. Other characters are surprised, as he can be so careless. Subsequently, they were already hiding in the bushes, watching their opponents carefully. Hunters ask each other how many opponents. It turns out that the orcs are only about 6, and it seems not so much. But even though the protagonist notes that there are few adults among them, for ordinary hunters, the appearance of so many orcs can cause true fear. More recently, he felt the same fear himself. One of the children turns to the protagonist and hopes if they can truly cope with so many enemies. The young man smiles and reassures him. They say, "You should not worry." He reassures the children, reminding them that with their current skills, training a little, they will easily cope with this task. He is convinced that the girl will be surprised when she will bring materials extracted into the orcs. His words inspire children. The characters make a promise to accomplish this task. They have already prepared for the battle. Adult hunters shout, "Do they really send children to the hell of the battle?" This is pure madness. But the protagonist's students do not hesitate. They decide to act the first, determined, and rapidly rush into the attack, using their abilities to become even faster. Men cover the horror when they watch it. Children use the skills of Ice Block and Storm Shot. Thanks to this coordinated cooperation, they manage to overcome one orca. Hunters are surprised to watch their agility. Meanwhile, one of the children with a cry rushes simply to the crowd of opponents, announcing that these enemies were his prey. Thanks to the skillful technique of long-standing blows, he was able to overcome a whole crowd of opponents. Further from the sky, lightning suddenly flashes. There are almost nothing left of the opponents in a few seconds. The children joyfully run to their teacher, shouting loudly that they have succeeded. They rejoice that they have coped with their opponents. Hunters are surprised to be thrown away by words they say, whether it is not a joke, because the children destroyed all the orcs literally in a moment. The main character reassures that all is well, but the frightened hunters ask him again. The man notes that he is not at all like others, because even adults are at danger, fighting the orcs. Only special children are able to cope with them so easily. Then hunters ask, "Who are these children?" The young man returns to them and confesses. In fact, these children drink elixirs of mana and endurance every day, and he also makes them train hard. Hunters are amazed and asked if children really use his potions every day. The protagonist replies that he told them about the magician once a week. Not only did it help, the Ryodok group also participated in their training. They trained more persistently than others, so they grew up faster. In addition, their equipment is made of hardened metal. Their armor, gloves, boots, and even fabric, reinforced by alchemistry, made of truly special material. Hunters are surprised to look at children. They have such equipment that adults would envy. The protagonist notes that for the baby it is a little too much. They say, the luxury is not by age. Still, the guy does not want the children to be injured. The children ran to their teacher and began to sway what they were cool. The young man smiles and says that they really coped. However, the full correction of the mistakes is still far away. Children thought, were they not working well together? But the young man was in a hurry to reassure them. He meant another. The problem was not in teamwork, but that they misaligned the situation. From the bushes, a wounded orc, which survived in the battle, looks out. The hunter for a moment is kissing and strikes him with an arrow. Children look back on this unexpected shot. The man says they again missed the chance that could cost them. The young warrior only sighs, feeling bitter disappointment. The protagonist notes that the children who coped with the orcs have already made the impression on him. They worked well, so they can pick up materials as a reward. The hero agrees and decides to disassemble the orcs into materials. He is curious to know how much to get for it. Children glow with joy, watching him. The hunter says it's a good picture. But the village of Golden Zoraya is a really spooky place. The morning came, and the maid greeted the main character gently, addressing him as a master. Before creating Ryuko, the girl is interested in the fabric of a dragon doll. The protagonist explains that he wants to do it. Because it will be for him for the first time, he asks for advice. Kliuska takes his drawings and asks why he is such a doll. He explains that it creates from the materials that make the strongest skeletons, gullets, and hargulia, and this doll will have strength even greater than that of the most nasty bosses of ancient dungeons. The protagonist thinks that he needs a person who is able to keep secrets, is well-oriented in the house, and is able to protect people. In simple words, he needs a gorge assistant. The girl confesses that he almost scared her to death. If he really needs only one maid, why not make him his servant with his servant? When a hired maid is nearby, she will immediately be transferred to all the knowledge. So she will be really useful for him. The girl confesses that something is still concerned about her. She decides to act in her own way and prepares a gift for the main character. The girl opens the box, and in the middle of the huge, precious stone shimmer. The main character asks what it is. The girl replies, "It is a stone. It will give the doll character and behavior, will allow her to become a real person. You can say that this stone will be the brain for the doll. It is almost impossible to find such a thing in the world. It is incredibly rare. This stone figure is the embodiment of the most perfect personality in the whole kingdom." The main character looks at her. The girl is wondering if he is glad. She did everything he needed for his future doll with this stone. In fact, this thing cannot be used as a murder machine. The protagonist moves that she gave him such an important thing. He hugs his teacher and thanks her from all her heart. He notes that this girl is the best teacher, because not everyone is capable of such sacrifices for the sake of students. The heroine repels him and asks not to hug her so easily. The young man apologizes, explaining that he did not recognize her girl at first because she looks like a baby. Whatever it is, the girl still extends him a doll. She strictly warns that he does not even think of inventing her strange. In addition, she forbids the protagonist to teach her any fighting tricks. The young man smiles happily and cannot wait for L'Enfant to create a body. He dreams of creating the best maid in the world. The teacher mentally sighs and thinks what a happiness is, that the guy is so simpler. She returns to the main character and says he has another important thing that he or she must tell him. She wants to discuss this study with him. The young man confesses that he did not even think about it before. However, he promises to convey all the results of the work. They agree that this time the heroine will be his co-author again. This proposal moves the young man. The girl began to reproach the boy, and he immediately apologized. Thanks to this, the teacher gave him a stone. Thanks to this, he manages to create his own doll for the first time. As soon as she comes to life, she immediately welcomes him. Good morning. The morning begins with the maid enters the main character's bedroom and pushes heavy curtains on the window. She asks where he wanted to have breakfast. The protagonist replies that he wants breakfast in the living room. He rejoices from the fact that Ryuko awakened it in him. She makes everything perfect on the first attempt. He can trust any business and not worry about the result. Here it is, a real divine luck. The young man sincerely thanks to his teacher. He confesses that today's breakfast was delicious. The maid also agrees. She reports that today will start with lunch at Mr. Kyle. The protagonist recalls that it is time to announce the announcement of preliminary results on individual dry fields. So you will have to discuss this issue. The young man who helps in the fields hopes that his efforts will benefit. The hero thanks for the delicious food and reports that he is already going. Then he asks what the doll will do until he is. She said she planned to remove everything around, and the hero asked her not to let him down. The doll wished him a happy road. The young man thinks what a cleaning is and why she uses the same word, because the house is already clean. It turns out that she even cleanses in places where no one looks. The hero feels pride and pleasure from his maid. On the roof of the house, 2 people are observed. When the hero goes, they hope to finally get their legendary elixirs. They intended to grab him hostage and make money. They discuss in which he is now a state after a fight with a dragon, and how he showed himself in that battle. Suddenly, a doll arises behind the robber and turns to the deer, but they ask men how they can help them and think about whether they really came here on an official order. Men rush into battle rapidly, not even understanding how these dolls were able to sneak out of the rear so quietly that no one heard any sound. One of the men raises his hand to hit it, but suddenly something goes wrong as he intended. Of course, the sword sinks rapidly into the girl, but she already rotates inside herself. She calmly catches the blade with 2 fingers. Then her satellite says that now everything became clear. They are just those who are called the thieves. The maid cuts the ball with its blades in one movement. A man looks at her with surprise. He just doesn't understand how she can hold the blade so firmly. Meanwhile, the doll is rapidly attacking. She approaches the second robber and gives him a slap. The robber instantly turns to the side, and the girl, along with his partner, is shaking his breath, watching him. The Elephophone, along with their mentor, was progressing in construction, though it seemed much more difficult to penetrate than they thought. It is especially difficult to do this in the shoes, for which the maid will never forgive them. The robber cannot hide his surprise. He rushes out of his opponent, but suddenly something blocks his way. The man raises his head and sees the maid. He looks at her, feverishly looking for words to somehow justify his actions and escape. However, the girl only looks at him with an empty, indifferent look. In fact, the artisan did not even know that the girl used many materials from the dragon, all the best in the world, selected specifically for her character. But in fact, this thing was a little unusual. It turned into a strongest maid, which had its own character and unique nature. I didn't notice or knew about it then. The girl also reported that the cleaning was already completed. Suddenly, someone recruits the main character. The boy on a horse greeted him on a good morning. The young man wondered if he was really able to ride, to which the child confessed that until now, she had no such experience. Thanks to the main character, his health has become better, and now he is studying writing. Mr. Kyle is a real worker. Although he cannot run yet, he has already learned to walk. The girl offers to admire the fields together. The main character is interested in what happened to their animals. The heroine is amazed. She asked the merchant of 2 hardy jumping horses, and that is what, in her opinion, they were given. When they turn to the bird, it replies quite gently. The hero is surprised by the unusual name of Skakun. He mentally rejoices that she has not chosen a rural name for him. The girl notices his facial expression and asks what happened, and maybe he really wanted to get her wing? Suddenly, the hero suddenly hugs a little girl. He is wondering if the mine goes with them. The girl replies that if he believes that she interferes, you can ask her back. A little girl in the eyes turns tears. Angry men come to the characters and begin to swear on the guy, accusing him of crying ladies because of him. The guy asks to stop, explaining that he was not guilty of anything. In fact, Kyle made everyone think that he was bad. The guy apologizes. The protagonist leans up to the girl, challenging her not to cry. He proposes to go somewhere. At this point, he absolutely forgets about the cruelty of two annoying knights. If he becomes angry, he can be killed immediately. Then the main character is interested in what happened in the fields. The guy replies that the case concerns the fields that have recently sown. There seems to have something incredible in the fields. The main character is interested. What happened? He is grateful to women for making a lot of efforts, and came to them. The young man says he heard about some serious event in the bedrooms. She replies that it is easier for them to see everything in their own eyes than to listen to explanations. The woman leads them and shows what really happened. The hero stopped suddenly, looking around. The young man asks what it is. The woman explains that this is all wheat. Heroes cannot be tired of why a real forest grew instead of wheat. They sowed so much. It is simply impossible. The woman explains that in fact ordinary wheat really ripens. But Anna remembered one important thing that could affect wheat growth. She remembered how the main character gave them a special fertilizer. Last month, they sowed wheat fueled with this product, and soon saw the first sprouts. It was very comforted, and they did not have time to blink an eye, as the wheat field changed in their eyes, and now they saw quite differently. The young guy refused to believe it. Of course, its fertilizer was a truly quality product. But is it really so effective? He thinks that it may be not only in the fertilizer, but also in the soil on which they grew weeds. This land really has many nutrients. The guy can't believe it. He asks if they explored wheat for safety. The woman replied that they had prepared many different dishes to check, and no problem with any. On the contrary, all the dishes received great reviews. For example, this baking made from that grain. The woman sincerely invites everyone to taste. The hero tastes the dish, and admires that the taste is just incredible. At first glance, the stale bread, which was in his hands, as if turned into a soft dough. Its elasticity is pleasant when you bite a piece, and first you even forget about the taste. But in a moment, the body envelops a pleasant heat. This bread is a true work of art. The guy states he wants to try too. The guard immediately appeals to him to stop. He says everyone can see for themselves. This is an unusual wheat, so it is worth watching a little. Suddenly, the girl decides to break a piece of bread and taste it. Sun is in no hurry to Mrs. The protagonist asks the girl if she is delicious. She quickly chews bread and nods. The boy asks if it is not possible. The guard strictly forbids. Then the child with tears in the eyes begins to beg Alfred. The main character assures that nothing will happen. The child can try a little at this. The guard asks him not to say such unfounded things. However, the hero convinces that there is nothing to be afraid, and workers can be trusted when he is nearby. The man says he understands that it is a male business to demand such. But if you ban the boy to eat bread, what will it happen then? Does the child not hate him because of it? In the end, a man is exposed to his persuasion. He decides that even if something happens, they will still be able to cope. The baby tastes bread and admires that he is very tasty. With such beautiful wheat, even more fields could be sown. Workers assure that they will be able to transplant the crop if they use Mr. Kraft's fertilizer. The earth here is fertile. It does not need rest, so this month you can sow wheat several more times. The hero is delighted with such news and proposes to expand the fields and start collecting all the available harvest. The guy wondered if the main character could prepare the required amount of fertilizers. The young man said confidently, "Yes, everything will be ready. The crop will be enough for everyone, and even remain a little for export." Due to this, the power of Gold Dawn will only grow with the expansion of the fields. Wheat, grown on unique fertilizers, is flying like hot pies. Thanks to the main character, the merchants are in the queue to steal this harvest. Now the hero thinks whether it is time to change the name of his wheat. A few days have passed. The events are transferred to the adventure room. Kotadovchina welcomes the main character of a good day. The protagonist notes that it seems that it is not a question of choice. The girl replies that after the spread of rumors, gentlemen and adventure seekers began to come to her. Recently, she has been working in the Adventurers Guild. In the glow of the golden dawn, everyone lives in harmony. The protagonist is happy that everything is so good. The girl asks what he wants today. They have many rare specimens. The hero is asked if it is possible to get only one high-quality stone in this case. He is wondering if other stones are not high quality. The hero demonstrates this, showing that most stones from the collection of ordinary or even poor quality. The girl confesses that she did not even suspect it. Questioning admits that this city is full of strange materials, so its magic does not work on them. She thankfully notices that he agreed to help her. However, the guy immediately denies. He did not promise anything. And even if he is able to use the magic of detection, it does not give him the right to use it without permission. The cast yard only sighs and says the official permission for such a lot of money. She assures that everything is okay, and people will believe her when they find out that these materials personally chose craft. The protagonist asks her whether his opinion is really worth anything, and whether it is possible to trust the decision of a person who has no rights at all. The girl in response notes that he seems to have not yet understood who he really is. The hero decided, let her do everything he wants, but he is not going to answer for the consequences. Meanwhile, the protagonist, the student, is constantly training, giving all himself daily exercises. He already has a perfect skill in fencing his sword. Experienced hunters agreed in the battle against children. The girl tensely pulls the bowstrings of her bow, and one after the other launches arrows flying rapidly and accurately. Hunters reported that they were surrounded. Adults are reviewed and discussed. Do these students really differ from ordinary children? Meanwhile, the young guy looks at something that has attracted his attention. He congratulated the acquaintance. The young guy wondered why the children were training with the adventurers. Reddick replied that he just wanted to check their strength. The legendary endurance potion has a very powerful effect, so the peasants only sell its weaker version. But these children were able to cope with the same legendary tincture that experienced adventurers accept. The protagonist did not know what he would end, so he asked Radok to look at the children. Guys cannot understand why children are so tired if they should feel energetic by the plan of the potion. The protagonist tells that today he deliberately sent them to training without a legendary potion. It turned out that 2 adventurers who fought with children had a rank C, and the other 2, rank D. This means that the true strength of these children can be a problem even for influential foreign guests. After one unknown event in the past, the highest 3 ranks began to be awarded only after a truly thorough check. The protagonist tells that for many adventurers, even just getting to such a rank is a big dream. All this happened because he was a little overdoing with his students' training, and that's what they could achieve, even under the guidance of the best Golden Dawn group. They tell him that he should get used to the rhythm and unusual logic of this place. At this point, Konradin suddenly interrupts his reflections and notes that it must be forgotten that the children have grown up so through a continuous training and his legendary potions. After all, his alchemy is really impressive. The man comes up to them, noticeably rejoicing that he found the heroes. The protagonist immediately recognizes the head of the Guild of Adventure. The man invites the young man to walk with him. The protagonist notices the fuss around and suggests that something happened in the city. The man nods in response and insists that he needs to hurry. Events unfold in the Adventurers Guild. The protagonist is interested in a man who has an urgent business. He replies that he will speak straight. Recently, significant accumulations of the basilisks have been observed in these parts. The young man again asks about the royal animal of Tamils, an amazing creature with parts of the dragon and the snake, but with the head of the rooster. Feeling the breath of this creature, the body of a living person begins to gradually harden, as if crystallized, and eventually turns into a stone. The areas where they appear are quite large. How many of them really? No one knows for sure. The protagonist appeals to his friend and is interested in the case with the resistance to crystallization. He says in response with confidence that with light breathing he is able to cope with it. However, even such experienced adventurers, as it cannot fully protect themselves from crystallization. The protagonist wondered how many royalists lives here. The man replied that there was no exact information, but there may be several thousand. And this is only an approximate assessment. The main character is stunned, because people have never encountered such a large number. The hero understands that if there are so many enemies attack the city, he will not remain a trace. They built a special fortress to protect themselves from such attacks. The main danger for them is crystallization, and if they are able to avoid this threat, it will be a great victory. They should protect the inhabitants of Golden Dawn at any cost. The protagonist says he needs to consult with Kyle. The man in response promises to find out all the necessary information. So, a few days after they found the basilisk, people have taken up how to protect themselves from this dangerous creature. The protagonist suggested to create a Antichrist case, licking and destroying crystallization. The maid turns to the hero and says he needs to rest. The bottom line is that he did almost nothing. The potion that can cut an Antichrist has not been possible that can be easily made in large quantities. Even one additional portion of this potion is able to save a creature, and only it can create it. Therefore, the protagonist is not eligible for rest. The room suddenly breaks into the room. She prefers that they are attacked by a flock of coquetry. Enemies are already coming directly to their city. The main character is interested in where the herd went. He is shown from which side the enemy comes from. The young man concentrates, activating his ability to see the distance. But on the other hand, a huge crowd of mythical creatures rushes. If you do not take any action, then there will be no living soul. The protagonist asks if Kaylee was already transferred to what he was answering. The messengers have already gone on the road. As for the protective system, Mr. Kyle still prepares his troops, so only Alfred and Belsi can participate in defense. Among the adventure seekers, the contract was signed by about 20 people. These people do not object to such raid at all. Some of them appeal to the main character to calm down. One of the adventurers noted that everyone who is ready to stand up for the city in a difficult moment is really ready to fight if trouble happens. Working in tourism is always full of risks, so these people have learned to be very careful for any danger. For them, life is always more important than money. Therefore, even if you offer them a large amount that will threaten their safety, they will refuse without hesitation. Karis explained that their groups did not sign any agreements with the city. The man in response noted that many grateful to this city for everything that it did for them. They would like to stay on one side with the protagonist and Mr. Kyle as long as possible. Men say that they came here not as adventure seekers, but as those who want to protect their home and dear people. They ask, "Do you have to pay something to save a friend?" The protagonist reflects on it. One of the adventurers notes that there are only a few hundred. However, he immediately adds that they are not used to fighting in the Great Army at all. Initially, the protagonist decides to develop tactics to defeat a demon of foreign tourists. If Vasiliskov's behavior suddenly changes, he asks him to inform him immediately. Events unfold exciting. Adventures are gaining momentum. Kyle approaches the main character and asks how he was here. Kraft is looking for his friend Redok. One of the men replies that unfortunately, he is not in the city now, because he performs the assigned task. When a man is absent, it looks like a loss of a large army. Alfredo, meanwhile, removes residents to quarters fortified. In any serious situation, the main thing is the safety of locals. However, there is another problem here. The protagonist explains that the walls have not yet been completed. They have 3 similar points. One is in the north, the other is in the west, and another one in the south. It was there that the old fortresses should be. The protagonist says that their army has only 300 people. He orders to send the strongest adventurers west. One of the men is hesitant. Do you really need to direct more than half of people in one place? Then there will be almost no one left in the other 2 directions. The hero tells that he watched the cockatrices from the tower. They behaved extremely aggressively. Noticing people, it is unlikely that these creatures will want to disconnect their hand. So, they will all immediately rush at those who stand in the west. The hero returns to the phone. He apologizes, but warns that all anti-anthelmintization potions will have to be sent to the west. A man asks what will happen to other parts. The protagonist says that he has only 200 anti-scenery potions, and this is clearly not enough for either the north or the south. A man with excitement asks what to do to others. Does the hero really intend to send them to the right death like cannon meat? The young man leaned on the chair and turned to the folder. It was extremely difficult for him to make such difficult decisions. He says Belcha should be in the north and Alfred in the south. With them, even a small detachment of warriors will be able to at least restrain the attack of Kokat races. The hero says that they have no more land from which the crystallization of the Antichrist could be lined, but instead they have potions that are able to remove crystallization. He just started making them, so there is little stocks, and even this will be enough to win a little time. Belsi and Alfred's detachments have received items that can remove crystallization and are now going to use them to save fossilized people. One of the men replies that they are too crazy as for the crowd. For such actions you need to prepare and gather with forces. On this hero reasons notes that while the preparation is ongoing, he will continue to be engaged in the manufacture of healing tinctures. The attendees do not understand why he wants to send warriors to hell after such weak training. It seems to be a really dangerous idea. But Bill confidently says that it is not a problem for her. She explains that everyone is performing their responsibilities. While some are guarding the city, someone has to stay near Kale to protect him too. The cheese asks the benches what they will do if the Kunoians are suddenly broke. He is concerned about what happens to Keel and Mom if a big bustle begins. The girl stated that she was a security guard and her duty to protect Kale. Meanwhile, the guy confesses that he values the lives of every member of the Golden Dawn and does not want to lose their city. He appeals to the girl asking, could she go to protect the city walls? It is an extremely dangerous business, but to do it only. If she remembers him, then he must think of both those who are dear to him and those whom he wants to protect. The guy asks her to promise that she will definitely return. Kyle adds that if she does not come to the rescue, he will never forgive it. He asks, will the girl agree to do it for him? The heroine gives honor and says that if it is the will of her lord, she will fulfill her duty and will not betray his trust. She reassures her friends and asks them not to worry, because with her abilities, cockatrice for her. A little thing. But Kraft really invented some insanely risky tactics. He should remember his limits. Now it all depends on how quickly it can act. The protagonist asks her to trust him, promising that he will definitely get her potions that can transform the Antichrist. With these words, a real battle began over time. The heroine returns home, and the maid meets her with a friendly smile and respectful bow. The young man returns to her and says he is short. They need to hurry, and this will need the help of all participants in this adventure. Everything has already been prepared to start brewing herbs. In order for an anti-scene potion to work, a person needs a whole bottle, and therefore, for the north to south, you will have to spend a whole barrel. Preparing the potion in the usual way, it will definitely not have time to send. If you try to prepare a drink for 100 people, it will exhaust its magical forces to the edge. Even if he fails to succeed, many victims will not be avoided. The young man understands that now is not time to dream, and you need to act as soon as possible. So he orders everyone to listen to the instructions of the servants. The workshop boils work, everyone is busy. The protagonist is taught to the full to be able to be timely. He finally reported that 1 barrel of the old crystallization potion was ready. He insists that he was sent to the north and south as soon as possible. Now it is to prepare the potion to remove crystallization. From the street come loud tumors. The main character asks, isn't it too humble today on the street? Suddenly, a terrible suspicion comes to his mind. He runs out in the yard to find out what happened. The young man notices smoke from the western wall into the sky. He watches how to prepare guns, and notices that cockatrixes are already broken through the defense. Fortunately, not everyone broke through. Only a small part leaked to the city. 3 sections of the defensive wall are still being built, and now the walls are only initially. People are worried about whether the fortifications can withstand. The maid turns to the main character and asks if he could, if he does not deny, find out what the situation with the protection of the walls is currently. She explains that if the walls are not built on time, the hero's gate will be stopped. Immediate confirmation of the situation is required. The hero reminds that she is just a maid and cannot just let her go. The girl asks to entrust everything to her. The protagonist agrees and asks her to find out what is happening to the main group of foreign tourists. After that, the maid is politely out. The characters return to their business and remind themselves that it is impossible to leave this place, because their battlefield is in the workshop. They should prepare the potion as soon as possible. If he had only 1 ingredient, he would have been finished cooking for a long time. The hero wondered where to find Cockatrix's egg. A few days before the attack, one of the main students suggested that their friends go and defeat the orca together. Her girlfriend confesses that she does not understand why they were collected here. She decides to go and call the hunter. However, a cat girl assures that they will remain. She says they just go for a picnic, just as they did it before. She asks, are they not strong enough? They do well without adults, especially since the masters will cope with the masters and brother. It reminds friends that they were allowed to use as much as they want. Her girlfriend replies that this does not mean that it will be safer. Then the girl proposes to go to the big boulder. If there are no adults, it turns into a real adventure. And the purpose of their adventure is to defeat the orca and pass the magic stone to your sister of Azu. The girls imagine how their younger sister will be passionate about praising them. She asks if endurance potions are ready. Hearing the affirmative answer, the girl reports that they are also ready. The heroine gives the command to go on the road. She suggested that he run and draw on the forces who would first get to the mountains. Meanwhile, there is a fierce battle near the city walls. The commander exclaims to his warriors, ordering them not to rush to retreat. He just rushes a huge monster from heaven. The man shades his head. The monster is difficult to fall to the ground, knocking down several soldiers. The knights appealed to their comrades to trust them. The commanders urged not to stay still because it is time to go to battle. Most adventurers were unable to work together. The man predicted that everything would not be easy, but did not think that the situation would become so difficult. He understood that he should take everything under control. They can still cope with the present forces, but if the enemy attacks all groups at the same time, they will not be able to survive. A fighter named Tiger asks if he should follow them. The commander only shakes his head and replies that they are unlikely to stop, even if done. In fact, he does not understand what to do next. Someone approaches him and asks if he is a Commander D-Guard. The man looks back sharply and fades with horror. The maid rushes to him, without stopping for a moment. She says she has to convey the message to the commander. The man asks why she appeared here. The girl tells that they say, whole walls will not stand the invasion of Kokadists, so protection is no longer so necessary. Although I can continue to jump very high due to my wings, the enemies will not be able to fly through the walls, so now the main thing is not to panic and fight for the last breath. The commander thanked for the news and ordered, now the most important thing is to keep a gap in the wall. He turns to a neighboring group and orders them not to attack, but to take defensive positions. The maid notes that the circumstances are now far from perfect. The man agrees with her. He says it would be good at least to number these groups, so it would be much easier to contact them. The maid wondered whether to inform the adventurers of their detachments. A man is surprised that she is only a maid, and is surprised how she can allow her to join the advanced forces. The girl assures that you do not create any problems, and adds that they use their access. The commander asks her to stop because she grabbed his spare axes. However, the strand of hair has already disappeared from the field. One of the fighters is charming. What time does the commander support them with one hand? In fact, in his hands he has a heavy juice, so massive that most can even raise it. However, the maid without any difficulty took two at once. The commander asks who this maid is at all. At this point, in an area where the leader has not yet won, the battle is ongoing. Soldiers fought bravely against cereals. Cockatrice hides among smaller enemies, holding their backs. The soldiers pay attention to him and are impressed with its huge size, as if they see a giant among enemies. The huge monster widely opens the mouth. Soldiers try to reflect the monster but quickly understand. Things are bad. Suddenly the monster's eyes roll, and it slowly falls to the ground. The soldiers were standing in place, looking at each other, not understanding what was happening. The silhouette of the maid is rapidly rushed by air, leaving only the shadows. With extraordinary speed, she cuts her opponent into several parts, and people at the bottom are only fascinated by this sight. The girl lands, cleverly crossing two axes flying opposite each other. She looks closely at everyone around. Her eyes are burning and resembling a wild boar. A moment, and the hero realizes, in front of him is a girl created by the main character. It again picks up a crazy speed and rapidly rushes directly to its opponents. She confidently straightens the supports and quickly destroys several more monsters. The girl returns to stunned soldiers and says calmly that they can now speak without obstacles. She turns to Mr. Lacton and reminds that his group is responsible for this area. However, at this point, coca trees are already beginning to break through the protection line. She explains that if they continue to move away from Mr. Degard, they will eventually divide into small groups that will be easier to destroy. Moreover, in this case, they will no longer be able to reach and destroy the leader cockatrice. The man apologizes to her, recognizing that they were really split. The detachment should return to the defensive line as soon as possible. In addition, the girl reports that from now on, the Lactance group will be number 1 and the Adzafire will be number 2. He, together with his detachment, must obey all the orders that he will receive. The hero asks the maid in surprise, from where she knows his name. The girl claims that the names of every resident of this city knows. The soldiers cannot hide their surprise, and the main character calmly replies that such is the work of the maid. She apologizes and says he has to pass a few more messages. The girl blesses the success in the battle, rises into the air and dissolves, disappearing without a trace. The detachment commander addresses the fighters with the question whether they saw it. After all she did, there is no drop of blood on it. Lactane is wondered if it was the only thing he noticed. Meanwhile, the girl performs her mission. It helps the detachment to deal with curly discs, carefully puts them in numbers, and does not forget about order. The messages are over. The communication has been restored. The girl fades in the battle rack. She realizes that the moment has come for a real battle. The heroine stopped in front of the long, dark corridor. At this time, the city is evacuated emergency. Well-mounted residents ask everyone to create a crowd and keep calm. They are provided first aid simply in the walls of the hospital. Azula carefully ties the girl's hand. Then she turns to her, wondering whether the baby really suffers from such severe pain. She tries to reassure the baby, assuring that all is well. The main character brings a hot drink and asks to drink slowly. Slowly. The girl turns to the boys and says that when they finish, you need to check if there are no wounded on the street. Children agree with her words. Someone calls her, and the heroine immediately rushes to the rescue. The girls go over and ask each other what they do now. The cat offers a girlfriend to return and give it. Something sighs. It was too late. She wanted to talk to her sister Azu, but now too busy. One of the friends suggested in this case to go to the guild. On this, the Kiagonia only shook her head and noted that if you do so, your sister will be angry with all of them, and this is not counting other problems. She assumes that they, and possibly their younger sister, can be expelled from the city. The girl falls on her knees from panic and grabs her head. The boy quietly says that he just wanted to make his younger sister happy. But everything went not at all as he dreamed. It would be much better for them to completely abandon any adventures. Children look back on a closet that hides what they know about themselves. If they were not embarrassed, they would never bring this egg to the Uralski city. It is this egg that was the beginning of the whole catastrophe. The plot is transferred to the main character's house. A man runs up to him and excitedly asks whether the potion is ready for removal of petrification. The young man returns to him and replies loudly that they have almost finished, and now he is just working on cooking. He asks which part of these people came from. They answer that they are from the right wing, from the Alfred group. The protagonist understands that the warriors have already begun to retreat from their positions. The center has already arrived, and with it most of the Kokatras, and now they are constantly asking for new reserves of potions. The protagonist understands that he is only rescued only by the fact that the left wing is already ordered. He asks if their commander cannot wait a little. A man is wondering how he imagines it. Their opponents, as if covered by rage, attack the mind. Even Alfred can no longer stand it. The main character in horror asks whether the enemies really broke into the city. The warriors answer that they are holding them on the approaches. However, they report that all desperate adventure seekers who rushed into the battle turned to the stone from the breath of Cocatrix. In addition, they were all crushed by these Carolans so much that only dust remained from them. The protagonist in despair confesses that he has just prepared a potion against occlusion. The man, in surprise, asked if this is true, immediately requires the hero to give him this potion. The young man insists that he will not do it. He will give them only a small part of what he has prepared. The rest will go to the center. The man responds to such an answer. Yes, how can this little part be able to help them? He begins to swear and shouts that they will all die here through the main character. Comrades try to reassure him and stop him. He insists that the young man thinks his head. The center is the most important on all sides. If in Seoul enemies break through there, so many opponents will enter the city that the situation will no longer be able to correct. The protagonist already spends a lot of time on it, and if he has to wait for the next game, he simply cannot stand. The man confesses that at first they wanted to pick up everything. He explains that they are not easy for them, and asks to come in understanding. The main character breathes heavily and leans over the barrels. There is only one thought in his head. You need to prepare as much potion as soon as possible. Or does someone call him named? The girl runs into the room and asks what the head hero can help. The young man responds in surprise to the appearance of Lafont. He is wondering if the girl has already finished with the fence, and with a smile replies that the last touch has already been done. We are asked about the successes with the cure. Men carefully pour the healing solution into the main character's mouth. The girl notices that the guy is upset and tries to cheer him up. She assures that now the protagonist cannot afford to give up. He needs to take himself and make every effort to make more than he can. You do nothing with the fact that he lacks the necessary, especially now because everyone has their own limits. She asks to allow others to help him at least somehow. The girl is wondering why she does it, because they are all now. The girl's words were deeply moved by a young man. He says that if it is this, then the medicine should be taken to the right wing. The girl is much faster than others, so this case should be entrusted to her. The main character grabs a barrel with medicines from the hands of men and states that it had to be negotiated earlier. She asked the main character to rely on her. She promised to provide delivery of the barrel as soon as possible. Meanwhile, the hero opened the Elixir of Mana. He focuses on doing his best and finally to create this dreamy medicine. The events are returning to the defense line again. Events unfold in the left wing. The commander looks carefully at the distance and reports that the enemy has already arrived. She orders her lawyer to act as requires their strategy to be alert. The girl rises on her horse. It rotates to the wing and says that it puts high hopes on it. Opponents rush to the wall at huge speed. The detachment rushes into battle. At the head of the troops, riding on a powerful horse, rushes the heroine. She exclaims a fighting cry, encourages her warriors, and calls for the latter to fight. Cockatrice rush forward, but he courageously stands on their way and does not allow them to go. The girl sprayed her horse. Ving became a stub. The fierce rivals did not stop. The heroine rushes rapidly and begins to wave the sword with all his strength. Struck on the cockatrice, their cries are spread loudly and shrill. The girl strongly directs the sword to one of the enemies and says in a cold voice, "It is their end." The opponents briefly die and breathe hard, restoring strength. Warriors from the detachment are enthusiastically watched by her skill. They say, "Belsi-san uses all the possibilities of the wing and gradually depletes cockatrices." The left wing plan was as follows. While the head of the detachment drives the enemies to the heap, others are fired at their arrows. Warriors support their commander, encourage the girl. Exclamations ask her to drive her opponents and not let them out of the trap. The heroine does not stop and quickly waves the sword, gradually pushing the opponents into a dead end. When everyone gathered in one place, the girl shouted loudly that it was time to attack. The archers pulled the bowstring and prepared to release arrows. They release a whole hail of arrows towards their enemies. There are numerous explosions. The detachment is gladly picking up the winning mood, thinking that the battle has already won. But the heroine strictly breaks their joy and orders not to relax, to remain vigilant. Suddenly, Basilisk appears near her. The monster is wide open. The commander is written, realizing that it is his end. But suddenly the arrow whistles in the air and hit the enemy. She hit him just in her head. The girl rotates and notices the hunter. He is suitable and wondered if everything is fine with her. The heroine exclaims, and sincerely thanks the young man for his saved. The young man encourages warriors, and says that it is also necessary to deal with the second wave of enemies. The leader of the detachment jokingly thinks whether or not to introduce him next time to the night girl. The young man is happy to exclaim that he will do his best. The main character is genuinely surprised as he heard her words. The young man exclaims that will deal with all the opponents. The girl is sure that they will be able to stay. But while they are trying to hold the position, a new group of enemies is already approaching the wall. However, under such pressure, protection will not withstand for a long time. At this point, the commander appeals to his subordinates on the right flank. He says that the boys have not yet drank stability potions, so they should not rush forward. All their fancy potions have already been exhausted, and another loss is something that they can no longer afford. And who will like the man who does so inadvertently? Warriors ask if he or she will have to fight himself. The commander replies that in general he will fight on his own, but their task is to get all the wounded enemies. The man warns that his battle method will be somewhat unusual. He rolled his horse and also went forward, joining the first ranks. A man with a frantic speed rushes forward, keeping the spear in front of him. Having shouted loudly his corporate call, he ripped the head brakes towards the cockatrice. The enemies do not stop and fly simply to the commander. Getting to the opponents as close as he could, the man begins to rotate the spear. Thus, he cuts his way, reflecting and dropping from the road of giant monsters. He succeeds. It neutralizes several opponents. His subordinates watch the duel with interest. They sincerely support their commander and admire how easily he pervades all enemies. When he has a spear, it is better not to approach. The man smiles at his horse and praises him for the wonderful service. However, the man did not take into account one important thing. His opponents were able to fly, and it was at this moment that a huge bird swept just over his head. She goes to defenseless warriors, and young people rush to escape. The commander discusses the situation loudly and causes himself for drawing so much attention. He notices that this basilisk is greater than all previous ones. The man is aware that the situation is serious and he may not have time. At this point, a cry is heard from above. Someone assures that he can handle it. The girl is rapidly rushing to her girlfriend. Thanks to the technique of stone crushing, it puts a powerful blow to the opponent's heads. Everyone was holding their breath and watching it with admiration. The monster falls on the ground, and the heroine is quietly landing next to him. She turns to the driver and informs the guys that she has brought with her cure. Warriors barely hold back tears of joy. The commander approaches and addresses her. The main character confidently states that she will fight with them. The girl who calls them, and is dressed in a jacket, probably skillfully owns a hammer. It will become a real support for them. With her, the characters will be able to last for a while. But despite this, the man is still worried. Everything has a limit, and now it all depends on how quickly I can prepare the potion. The events are transferred to the church. The girl bandages wounds to a wounded man. The maid quietly approaches her and turns to a girl named. She asks if the heroine has a minute. The girl turns and looks in surprise. The girl looks at her guest in surprise. She recognizes the familiar features of the maid's face and asks if he is really a man, his son. This unexpected question is amazing the main character. Water is wondering how the maid that accompanies the main characters can help. The maid, with her inherent sophistication, turned to the heroine and carefully wondered if she could see with 4 children raised in the church. A knock on the door came. The girls turned and wondered if help needed. The girl apologizes to the maid for her fatigue, but says she rests with children. They will help. Now she needs to get back to work. The girl leaves the room. The maid escorts her look, and then turns to the children and reports that he will now choose the name. She lends to the girls and wonder if they give her what is hidden behind their backs. Behind is a cabinet that hides the egg. Kervina looks at the maid with fear. The girl says that the protagonist is actually necessary. She reports that the girls will go with her just to the main character. The baby tries to argue, but the maid quickly interrupts them. The girls began to cry, apologize, and assure that they were genuinely sorry for what happened. The maid is surprised by such a reaction. She quickly becomes aware and also apologizes to the children. The girl confesses that she had just returned from the battle and has not yet had time to adapt to the peaceful environment. She smiles kindly and gives the children a warm, gentle look. She says that her face is always a gloomy expression, and it is even more difficult for her than a homework. She is replaced again because she became entangled. She only wanted to tell the girls what to do. She assures that everything will be well, and the main character is really a good person. She smiles and says confidently that the young man is sure to forgive them. The maid extends her hands to the kids to hug the toddlers. She kindly invites them to approach him all together. Meanwhile, in the house of the main character of cooking potions continues. The young man, breathing hard, does not stop and fights further. Here is another barrel of medicine. The young man says you need to deliver it now. The man next to him agrees. The hero understands that there is no time for rest. You need to prepare the medicine immediately. Suddenly, his head begins to rotate, and looking back, the man turns to the young man, calling him in the name. The man looks at the main character, but there is no time for action. The young man falls down, but suddenly someone has time to pick him up. This maid holds the boy firmly in his arms and asks if everything is fine with him. The young man rejoices in her arrival and says that she was remained unharmed. The protagonist smiles, notices that the girl was surprisingly strong despite her fragile appearance. Now he will have to take into account the power of his maid. The girl bows her head and thanks the young man. She informs the protagonist that everything is calm behind the walls. It seems that the enemies have not yet destroyed anything. The hero rejoices and says it is a very invigorating news. He breathes heavily and realizes that he is not avoided with him now. No matter how much the hero is drunk, fatigue and crazy exhaustion from magic are not hidden. This is the price that you have to pay for the creation of legendary elixirs in the same amount. The girl is aware. To change everything, something really important is needed. She turns to the main character and reports that he has another important news for him. The young man asks what she is talking about. The heroine turns to the children and calls for them to be bold. The boys are afraid to bring their eyes to the teacher. They are unbearably ashamed and awkward to recognize their mistake. The maid easily pushes the cat girl and tells her that she may not rush and act at her own pace. The little girl blinks her eyes with her hands and apologizes. She assumes that the monster's attack could have happened through them. The girl trembles with fear and does not dare to lift her eyes on her teacher. The main character looks at the subject that extends him a little girl. The girl holds the egg of the basilisk, and the surprised man with enthusiasm is watching everything that is happening. The baby continues to extend the egg forward and confesses that she came here for the adventure. At first, she thought she would take this egg as a trophy, but now he does not want everything to end in that way. One of the men calls the girl a cat and sharply tears the egg out of her hands. He says she doesn't even understand what she did. The horror children begin to beg for forgiveness. The main character instantly grabs an angry man by the hand and does not allow him to hit the baby.